Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and we are live at somethingtowrestle.com. And of course, we couldn't do it without the one and only John Layfield. John, what's going on, man? How are you?
I am so happy I found out that Dave Silva also doubles as a 5-ball. It's the greatest thing ever.
Well, listen, we never know where to put our fingers in Dave. Wait, I don't know what we're talking about. Let's move on. Ron Killings is back in WWE. We talked about this last week, John. It was the news that shook us all up, and we couldn't believe that there was going to be a version of Ron Killings outside of WWE. He'd been there hell as long as High Definition had been, and then he had his big triumphant return this past weekend at Money in the Bank. Were you surprised to see this? And what was your reaction when you saw that Ron Killings is back?
I was very surprised to see it, but I was very happy to see it. I don't know what happened. People are debating whether it was a whole thing was a work or not. It sounds like it wasn't. I could care less. I know it's fun to debate. Is it a work? Did they have the whole thing planned? I really don't care. I think it's fun. He was gone. Fans said they wanted him back. He comes back, gets this huge ovation. I'm glad he's back. Sounds like he signed a great deal. I'm very happy for him. He belongs there. I mean, he's one of the best characters WWE's had in the last 30 years.
The reports are that the deal came together on Friday, and he returned using his real name, which is obviously going to be something that he'll be able to use after WWE. So that was a strategic request by Mr. Killings. Yep. I'm super grateful that he's back, and I'm like you. I don't really care how it happened. It happened, and it got us all invested and interested. But the thing that I really sort of scratch my head about, John, is, and I mean, listen, WWE's on a tear right now, so it's hard to criticize WWE. But it does feel like what would have been wrong with Triple H just saying, hey, you guys made your voices heard. We heard it, and we're here to over deliver. I mean, he could have been the internet darling by just saying, hey, we heard you, we listened, and we answered. Instead, it was like, oh, enjoy the show. I don't know. It just feels like you had an opportunity to try to debate with them or just say, hey, man, we just want to super serve you guys. You're our audience. I thought it was a weird response. Why not just say, hell yeah, you guys changed it? Because you want that engagement, right?
100% they want that engagement. They want the fans to reach out. They want the fans to say things. And I don't quite understand because they're playing both sides of it. And Conrad, I agree with you. WWE is hitting on all cylinders. So this is no criticism of WWE. They're selling out in arenas all over the freaking world. It's unbelievable. I never thought the business would be as good as it is. But they're everything else they're saying, okay, this is how we set it up. This is how, they had a meme on the internet a while back that had Jerry Lawler getting up and he's slapping Andy Kaufman. And they said if this had been done today, they'd set up the next day and say, okay, this is how they did it. This is how they played their role. This is how it was all done. They love giving all the recipe out there, which I'm a little bit against. I'm not sure. I'm not completely 100% sure if it's wrong or not. Their business is fantastic. I don't know if it's fantastic because of that or in spite of that or if it doesn't matter. I have no idea. But it seems strange that they're kind of playing both sides. They're saying, hey, we changed because of the fans, and this time they're kind of keeping that intrigue. I like what Triple H did because he kept the intrigue of maybe this was a work all along. And so now you don't know you kind of keep this little bit of opaque of what's going on behind the scenes. I like it personally, but it's a little bit of a departure to me from what they've been doing.
I totally agree. Listen, I like that they're doing it this way and trying to keep kayfabe. I just think I would say, how about let's not do a press conference? If we're going
100%, I think those press conferences are horrible. I hate them because there's no way to win with those things because
that's it.
You want to either stay in character or not stay in character. It's hard to do both. It's hard to work and then also shoot on those things. I don't get the press conferences.
Yeah, I mean, that's all I'm saying is this is a company that this summer we're being told is releasing a series called, well, I forget what it's called, but the idea is it's a peek behind the curtain into how the creative comes around.
Right.
And so if we're going to lift that velvet rope and we're going to show you how the sausage is made, well, I expect you at a press conference. It's called WWE Unreal. My apologies. Our crack producer here.
The 5-ball.
The 5-ball. He tells us it's called WWE Unreal. We're going to see what really happened or didn't happen in that show. Not necessarily in regards to this, but I'm just saying I don't think you can have it both ways. And I feel like if you're going to do a press conference like The Rock did after New Orleans, where he just lays everything out, as a matter of fact of here's how it was and here's what we did, I'm okay with that. But then when we come back and we're like, watch the show, it's like, either we're going to do the press conference and it's going to be legitimate, or we're going to do the press conference and it's part of the show. And I'm okay with either one of those, but I think it needs to be more consistent. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I completely agree. And you know, the thing is right now is the easiest time to work people.
Yes.
Because they expect you to be completely transparent. So now is the easiest time to work people. So when Hunter says this, I'm a huge fan of this. I'm a huge fan of saying, hey, it was all part of the show. I'm like,
yes.
Cool. You don't know if it was or not. You think it probably wasn't, but you don't know for sure. I love that because that blurs that line. And I think that's important to blur that line. They don't really. I don't believe. Now, they obviously did it this past week, or I think they did. You know, we don't know for sure. Again, you blurred the line. But they've opened up so much of the veil that I think to me it's kind of tough to do that now. It's hard doing both. I think you should do both. I think you should open up, and then that gives you the ability to work easier because people know you're so transparent.
We talked about it last week when we thought that this was really the end of Ron Killings in WWE, and you and I both agreed he'd be a bigger star a year from now than he is now. The reports, and again, who knows at this point, but the reports are that this isn't your standard WWE contract upon the return, but it does get him one final run with WWE. I hope that does a lot to sort of build some brand equity in his name, Ron Killings. And I do think that he'll make a boatload of cash outside of the tent. Of course, he was overwhelmed with positivity on social media when he logged in, and he wrote something like, no, hashtag we want truth was seen, heard, felt, and understood. Believe me when I say this. I love every one of y'all to death. We made history together. What a freaking cool story this is, isn't it?
Can you imagine? I mean, you've worked in this company. I don't know how long has Truth been there? He's been there 20-something years.
08.
So, okay. So he's been there almost 20 years, 17 years.
Yeah.
This is his 17th year. And, you know, you wonder, do people like me? To my character? Is it worth it? And all of a sudden something happens and the whole world comes out and vouches for you. And the fans are chanting, we want truth. I mean, that's pretty cool to have that happen. You know, not many guys get to understand how much they are loved and appreciated while they're doing the job. And Truth got that. That's pretty cool.
Ron Killings is our topic today, but before we talk more about his career in WWE, we do want to spend a few minutes talking about what else happened at Money in the Bank. We saw Seth Rollins win the men's Money in the Bank. We saw Naomi win the women's Money in the Bank. And I loved her interview sort of post-show with Big E at the desk. Just a real outpouring of emotions from Big E about how long Naomi had been a part of this company. I guess she first started working with Big E back in FCW in 2009. And here we are 16 years into her run. And this is probably the most high profile thing Naomi has done yet. Listen, it's kind of old hat for Seth Rollins at this point, but that's a big deal for Naomi, is it not?
It's huge. Yeah, I remember she came in. You know, she's so charismatic and she's so fun, and she's a wonderful person, by the way, for those that don't know her. But we had to go to some type of break because she would blow herself up on the dance coming down. You know, she did that great dance coming down. But like anybody, I mean, you dance for like 2 minutes, and all of a sudden you got to start the match. So they give her a little break. We had to figure out how to do it, you know, creative wise with the camera, so she could catch a breather right quick before she'd have to go into her match. It was just fun. You know, she's just a fun, bubbly personality.
She really did have a fun run. I know she's been the world champ before. I know she had the LED belt, but I mean, this is a different WWE. I mean, they're hotter and bigger than ever right now. Super thankful for her to have this opportunity. What a story she's got. Dominic Mysterio picked up a win over Octagon Jr. This was a match that was born out of the AAA afternoon show when Worlds Collide. There was a lot of people, you know, chatting beforehand saying, I can't believe there's only 4 matches on the pay-per-view. There's always 5. And then we found out, well, there was a 5th one. I love the idea that we were integrating AAA talent on a WWE pay-per-view. Dominic Mysterio victorious over Octagon Jr. What did you think of the execution of this? Put together a match for the evening show on the afternoon show? Sign me up.
I think it's awesome. I think the integration was great. I saw a lot of the show about clips. You know, apparently on the internet I was supposed to be there. As was reported. I don't know where that came from. I would have loved to have been there, but as far as I know, it was never planned. So I'm not sure where that came from. But look at what was going on at AAA show first. You know, that this guy, for one, it's hard to get over. And I don't care where you are. People are going to look at Lucha, and I saw some comments saying, oh, I don't like the Lucha style. Okay, I get it. A lot of people didn't like the Memphis style. A lot of people didn't like the Texas style. A lot of people didn't like a lot of things. It's hard to get over. They have a whole country and a cold culture and a heritage down in Mexico. And these guys like Mr. Iguana, these guys, Penta, these guys that have gotten over down there, it's hard to get over anywhere. And they are massive stars in Mexico. If they can figure it out there, they can figure it out somewhere else. The problem you have with guys that come into territories that have never been over, you don't know if they can get over. Guys that have gotten over somewhere, at least they can get over, because that's hard to do. And these guys have all gotten over in Mexico. I think they're going to be fine. It's a different style, but they're going to sell so much merch, it's going to blow cash registers out, even though people don't use cash registers anymore. But the stuff that they're going to be able to do with these guys, I think it's fantastic. And to have Dominic beat one of these guys, that's brilliant.
I do want to talk a little bit more about the AAA show, but before we do, I do want to spend just a minute and talk about Becky Lynch. She is now the new women's Intercontinental Champion, and this is obviously a real big deal because this is like one of the last belts that Becky hasn't won. I mean, she's been a tag champ at this time. She's held the big belts. And I know that we've seen some other talent do this before. Guys like Roman Reigns and hell, even Ric Flair and even yourself would win a world title and then come back and have a match for the Intercontinental Championship. I kind of like this. What do you think of Becky Lynch becoming the new Intercontinental Champion?
Yeah, I was put the Intercontinental Championship on me right before I retired against Rey Mysterio, and I believe it was my friend CM Punk that did the favor. Obviously I'd done a lot for him, and we're friends, and that's what you do. But I didn't realize what a hole it was in my resume until I was retired and looked back and the Triple Crown champion. I held all the titles, and my career would have been, I think, would have had a little bit of a gap in it if it hadn't had the Intercontinental Championship. So it is a big deal. And so I'm very happy for her. It's the same thing you do with Roman. You kind of check those boxes and check all the titles. And for me, when I look back at it now, I'm really glad that I got that little run in it. Now, obviously, that run was to give me credibility to go into Mania with a bigger match, for Ray. But so what? That's what you do. But I think it's cool.
I do want to ask you about the main event. This is as loaded of a main event as we can get. Cody Rhodes teaming with Jey Uso to pick up a win over John Cena and Logan Paul, of course, with a little help from a returning Ron Killings. I know that Rikishi was critical of the booking of Jey in this, but man, what a star-studded main event. Did you have a chance to catch any of the main event, and what did you think?
Yes, I did, and I thought it was fantastic. You don't want to burn through these guys. You burn through them in light speed if you just put them in singles match after singles match. And so, you got the mega powers. You got all kinds of tag matches that you end up putting these great stars in. That way you get to see 4 great stars instead of 2 great stars. I think it makes sense. I understand what Rikishi says, and he's standing up for his son, and I am not going to dispute anything Rikishi says. He's a good friend of mine, and he's obviously sticking up for his son, which a father should do. But I love the fact that you have these 4 great stars in there. And to me, this puts you in a great match. You're able to do something that's really cool without having to burn through a storyline of a singles match.
We should also mention that it was a big night for TKO. Not only did they have the Money in the Bank pay-per-view, but they had a UFC right after the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. And it just happened to be UFC 316, which maybe was a familiar way of promoting this. Check out this piece of merch, John. How cool is this? UFC 316 in the style of the old Austin 316. This TKO collab I didn't see coming, the crossover between WWE and UFC, but hey, that's pretty fun right there.
I think it's great, and it's something that's very unexpected and something that would have never happened before. Everybody wanted kind of separate, especially UFC wanted separate, to establish themselves as different from the working part of it. But now it's, you got a big crossover fans. I'd be interested to see how many crossover fans you actually have. People think it's a huge crossover, and I think both companies internally don't think it's as big a crossover. When we had the matches, the Sunday night, the Monday Night Wars, we didn't know if we had 2 different 4 ratings or if we had an 8 rating, because WCW would draw 4, we would draw 4. Then all of a sudden we have a show that's against no competition because WCW had the NBA on Monday night and a playoff or something, and we had the show by ourselves, and we did an 8, and we realized that it was actually 2 separate audiences that were watching, which is hard to believe, but that's what the rating said. 2 separate audiences that were watching WCW and WWE. They think the same thing right now, is that it's almost 2 separate audiences that watch UFC and WWE. I think there's more of a crossover. It certainly seems that way to me, but it'd be interesting to see that exact crossover, because we thought the same thing back in the Monday Night Wars, and it turned out it was 2 different audiences.
Hey, I want to ask your opinion. I'm a big UFC fan from way back. I really started to get hardcore into it, I guess, in maybe 2001. And I was just, I've been to at least 50 UFC events in my life. Just a huge fan of the UFC. But in my opinion, and again, this is just my opinion, I don't have any sort of inside info on the numbers or anything like that. It does feel like the UFC is on a downward trend right now, whereas the WWE is on an upward trend right now. And there's certainly been lots of rumor and innuendo about the next television rights deal or pay-per-view deal or whatever the new opportunity is going to be for the UFC sort of post ESPN. Do you think the UFC has lost some ground where the WWF has picked some up, or is that not the way you see it?
No, I think they have, and I think Dana White. I would never criticize Dana White because he's done this incredible job. I mean, they were going to sell this company for $2 to $4 million. It was to Vince back in the 90s, and couldn't get it done, and all of a sudden he turns this into this, part of this $30 billion company. I mean, Dana White has done an unbelievable job. It's just hard to create long-term stars.
Yeah,
it takes a long time for a Conor McGregor to get over. And not because, and he's one of the biggest stars of all time. I'm using him as an example, not as an example of it takes him a long time. He's one of the biggest stars ever. And if it takes him a long time, it takes everybody a long time. It takes you a while to get to know these guys' names. I just think it's tough with these guys because they're all so good now. And so now you put number 1 against number 2, and anything can happen. You have a good right hand, you have a good kick, you have a submission. All of a sudden now this guy that you want to be the star, or girl you want to be a star, gets beat. And they've only been there 6 months to a year on top. That's tough. I would use the old Bob Arum, Don King model, and it's hard to disagree with Dana White. He's built this company. You're armchair quarterbacking a guy that's turned something from nothing into a multi-billion-dollar company. It's one of the greatest stories of all time. But if you are armchair quarterbacking, because that's what we do, I would do it like Don King and Bob Arum used to do. I would take the champion, put him against a number 15 ranked person on a card somewhere a couple times a year, and I'd only have him fight 1, maybe 2 big fights a year. Because, if you put them in a fight that you pretty much know they're going to win. Now, anything can happen because these are all great pros. But these guys are all so equal. You're just going through these guys in light speed. You put number 1 against number 2, they're going to get beat. They're going to get beat at some point, probably in a year. And then all of a sudden you start seeing your champions get beat. It's hard to build a name. I would build these storylines over years more than I would months is what I would do different. But again, it's hard to argue with what Dana White has done.
Well, there's no arguing that Cash App is number 1 when it comes to sending money or making money moves. And John, I want to ask your opinion of all the people you've worked with in WWE or people on our podcast network. You get to pick. Who do you think would be the least likely to pay you back on time?
Teddy Long.
Okay.
Hell yeah.
No,
not pay me back on time. Pay me back within 2 decades.
Okay. All right. We got to get Teddy Long Cash App because making money moves should be easy. And that's actually why there's Cash App. You see, it's fast, it's safe, and honestly, it's just way more personalized than all the other apps out there. There's no extra hoops to jump through. There's no extra stress, and all the tools are right there to help you cash in. Plus, sending money with the Cash App actually feels safe. They're looking out for you. You see, if something seems sketchy, or as the kids would say, sus, and they think you might be sending money to a potential scammer, well, they're going to warn you and make you think twice before you hit send. Think of it as having like your own personal diesel, your own personal bodyguard for your cash. You can even spice up your payments with custom texts and stamps and backgrounds because paying your friend for lunch shouldn't be so boring. And for a limited time only, new Cash App users can use our exclusive code to earn some additional cash. For real, there's no catch here. Just download Cash App and sign up. Use our exclusive referral code WRESTLE in your profile and then send $5 to a friend within 14 days. and then you'll get $10 dropped right into your account. Now, I want to repeat that because that sounds too good to be true. If for whatever insane reason you don't already have Cash App, just download it from your phone's app store, sign up, and enter our code WRESTLE in your profile. And when you send $5 to a friend, you'll get $10 just for getting started. Yeah, terms apply. That's money. That's Cash App. John, people are getting paid to listen to our show this morning. How crazy is that?
It's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I've
we're
never heard
like Santa Clauses.
Like, really and truly, Cash App has got to be losing their freaking mind here. I give you $5 and then I get 10. Like, how many times will they let me do that? I mean, I know the answer is once, but boy, you want to talk about this is crazy. What a crazy way to market. We're going to pay you to be our fan. Go download Cash App, enter our code WRESTLE, send $5 to a friend, and you'll get $10 just for getting started. John, we're live here this morning, and live means occasionally you make some mistakes. I mistakenly said that our topic today is Ron Killings. It's actually Godfather. We are going to be talking about Ron Killings later today when we hook up with Jeff Jarrett and talk about all things My World. So stay tuned for that later this afternoon. But
they're both high. Maybe that high just kind of osmosis got to us, and we just got all confused.
We'll see what happens. I do want to go ahead and ask a couple of Ron Killings questions because we had some come in. Like Michael Collins is with us. And he says, John, is it better overall to use your real name or a stage name in wrestling? Now we see Ron Killings has done it both ways. So has John Layfield. I mean, I get there was a WWE reason that he wanted to create those trademarks and develop that IP, and it had value, and he owned it, and the performer didn't own it, he being Vince, pronoun boy. What do you make of this? Would you have preferred to use your real name your entire career, or did you like the ability to have a character? And I mean, I guess there's benefits for safety and other things, right?
Yeah, there's benefits for safety, and guys, wanted to use a gimmick name back then. I thought I needed a gimmick name. I would rather have used my real name. I'd rather have been like Kevin Nash, and just had my name out there once he went to WCW. You weren't allowed to really back then. Very few guys were allowed. If you did something big like a Jack Briscoe or a Jerry Briscoe or a Danny Hodge, you came in with your real name because it was a big amateur name. And back then, NWA wouldn't let you have the NWA championship if you had a gimmick name. You had to be a college graduate. You had to have your real name. So there was a little bit of push for both. When I came in the WWE, I wanted to use Hawk because I'd used John Hawk, which Killer Tim Brooks gave me that name on the fly one day. And Vince, that's when Brent said, okay, Justin Hawk Bradshaw. He didn't even care. So I wanted to be able to build a name and take it to Japan because I didn't think I'd be there that long. Because, back in the day, as they would change your name so WWE wouldn't build a name and you could take it somewhere else. They would own that name. That's why they always change your name. But I would rather go with my real name now. No, there's no doubt about it. I'd really go with my real name because you can use that forever. That's something you own. But that's something that any company like WWE, they don't want that at all. They want to be able to own the name. And I fully understand that because they are the ones building the name. There's justifications on both sides for this.
Before we jump over and start talking about Godfather, I do want to hit one more. Matthew Presley says Killings was approached by Jackie Crockett about being a wrestler at a halfway house. Any Jackie stories? Not much is said about him anymore. Did you ever meet Jackie Crockett?
No, never met Jackie. I was pretty good friends with Jim. When he tried to open up Texas, he invited me up to his ice cream store a few times to talk to me about business. Was very open to me. It was very nice to me, but I didn't know Jackie.
Well, what we do know is that WrestleMania is indeed heading back to Las Vegas. They made the announcement this past weekend during Money in the Bank, and it's not on Easter. I think Easter next year is on April 5th, so we'll be a couple of weeks after that. April 19th and April 20th, 2026, back in Vegas, back to back. This is obviously a big deal for Vegas and certainly a big deal for WWE. I can only imagine what Nick Khan was able to negotiate to afford them the pivot. I mean, once you've made an announcement like you did about New Orleans, and then you get the whole community excited, and then you walk it back and say, well, you're not getting WrestleMania, but you are getting Money in the Bank. We're going back to Vegas. Boy, that had to be, I can't wait until we learn more about the finances of this deal. It's got to be a home run for WWE, right?
That Nick Khan's a freaking rainmaker. My God, man. I've talked with Nick a whole bunch. He's the nicest guy in the world. I'd love to see him in a business setting because, man, it must be something special because that guy can negotiate anything. I'd hate to be on the other side of negotiating something, but I'd love to see him do his work, man. He apparently is just a freaking rainmaker. I heard how much money they made. I don't think it's public yet, so I can't say it. In Vegas last year before merch, it's an astronomical number. It is so freaking big. I understand why they went back. I was out there. I don't know if you were out there. I was out there for the WrestleCon or something, and it was unbelievable. They took over the entire city. I did that thing for West Side Gun. It was 2:00 in the morning. They had 4 wrestling matches in that same theater. The GCW had set the whole thing up. They kind of had rented it and then subleased it, and it's amazing. You don't when you have the Super Bowl, you don't have 10 other games that people come and you go watch. With wrestling, you do. It's unbelievable how they take over a city now.
Yeah, Nick Khan is a huge wrestling fan too. I mean, I've had conversations with Nick before, and he's a fan from way back. And we've heard even in more recent times that he was the catalyst for getting New Jack in the video game. Like, what a deep cut that is for a WWE executive to say, "Hey, let's put New Jack in the game." So, super excited that WrestleMania is going back to Las Vegas. The rumor and innuendo is that WrestleMania this year, John, and you can just blink if I'm close, was north of $60 million.
I would have to, yeah. I'd not only have to blink, I'd have to keep my eyes closed. Yeah. Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
The numbers it's astonishing. Yes. I heard the number and was told, by somebody that knew, and it's shocking. It's so high. I mean, shocking. Like, how do you make that much in a year?
Yeah. Yeah. Well said.
They had sold out of merch on some of the things on Thursday night. Thursday wasn't even supposed to be a real night. And they'd sold 4 times the amount that they had sold the previous year. And of course, WWE officials were mad, justifiably so, because they didn't know how to do logistics. They said, "Oh, we're out of merchandise." That's not a good thing. That tells me that you don't have no idea how to do logistics.
It's unbelievable, the demand for WWE, but not everybody seems to be thrilled with this. There was a report from our great close personal friends of the show. Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows have a fabulous podcast called Talking Shop. I know you and I both think a lot of those guys. And Carl was speaking his truth over the weekend, I suppose. He said something like, "It's not the WWE anymore. Guys, it's a company called TKO. I don't look at WWE as WWE anymore. They're TKO now, and that's great. That's good for them, but it's not the same thing." I think a lot of people kind of feel this. It doesn't feel as WWE without Vince. I mean, there's a lot that's changed in your mind, because I asked Eric Bischoff this last week, and he said, as someone who was there, not nearly as long as you, but he said, as someone who was there, when you go back, you're kind of nostalgic about the way it was, and you're expecting it to be that way, and because it was so familiar. And now when you go back, it's not as familiar. There's just been a lot of changes. Change is inevitable. It's a part of life, but I know that Eric was like, I kind of get it. What do you make of Carl Anderson saying it's not WWE anymore? It's TKO. It's a different thing.
I completely agree. Yeah, I completely agree. I go back and it's completely different. I see guys like Hunter, and I see Road Dogg, and I see Sean when I go down to NXT, and I see, of course, our friend Bruce, and they're our guys. They're always going to be WWE guys, but it's a new company. I mean, it is completely different, and I feel the same way that guys would come in to WWE when I was there and it got hot with Steve and Rock, and they say the same thing that I'm saying now. Oh, this isn't wrestling. This is completely different. Well, yeah, we're able to pay our mortgages now. When we weren't able to pay our mortgages before. It's not wrestling. It's sports entertainment, and thank God it is, because we have medical, we have huge contracts. It's awesome, And I know Carl's not saying that about the contracts and stuff, like the old guys would say about us, but it's the same type thing. It's different. It's completely different. I go back now; it's a complete different company. There's hardly anybody there. It's very corporate. But they're printing money. I'd take it every day of the week. I mean, if I go back now, if I was 28 now and back then had the contract now that some of these guys have, brother, I'd take that every day of the week. I think it's wonderful what they have right now. But it is different. Yeah, it's 100% different. It's almost nothing compared to the old WWE. It doesn't feel the same, doesn't look the same, doesn't act the same. All the stuff on the turnbuckles and the ring, but they're printing money. Everything evolves, and if they don't evolve, they'd be like no different than Crockett and Vern and Fritz.
Well, of course, that brings up the inevitable conversation of what is Vince going to do? Shane McMahon was actually stopped by TMZ, so that's outside the wrestling bubble, and they asked Shane about the rumors of him and his father starting a new wrestling promotion, and here's what he had to say. You never know what's going to happen out there. Of course, anything can happen in WWE, but those rumors are false. He was also asked about AEW, and he said, had a meeting with AEW, wish them continued success, but it's not WWE. It's not the company that I helped build, but you never know what's going to happen in this business. So he wasn't giving a non-answer, but there's lots of speculation. What is Vince going to do? Do you think Vince ever tries to get back into the wrestling business? I mean, there's been reports that he would actually like to find a way back into WWE. Do you think it's more likely, if there's three options, that Vince is done with wrestling forever, that Vince is involved with another promotion, maybe he starts one, or it's just not WWE, or Vince finds himself back in WWE? If you had to pick one and you were going to make it one of your 5 best bets, and I know you're not, but if you were, which one would you pick?
2.
Okay.
I would take 2. Then he finds himself in another promotion somewhere. I think it's interesting. I just don't know how he can keep himself from it. You know, he's going to invest and he's got all the money in the world. He never has to work again a day in his life, but he didn't have to work. He had to work for years.
Right.
And he loves to work. You know, I've told you the story many times. I don't know how you stay out there on that golf course for 4 hours. My God, that's hell. You know, because he couldn't understand being 4 hours away from work.
Right.
Because all he wants to do is work. He didn't want to go to his house down in Florida. He just wanted to work. And he loves wrestling. I understand he's going to make these investments. He's going to be the entertainment company. He didn't want to deal with Hollywood stars. He wants to deal with wrestlers, in my opinion. And I can see somehow in the next 10 years, I hope he lives a long time, because I think it's going to be very interesting having him around. And plus, I like him, what he does. I can see him doing something with the wrestling company somewhere just to show he can still do it. Vince is not going to go quietly into the night. And being a passive investor somewhere, if that is in fact what his firm is, I don't see that happening. He's an operator, and I mean that in a good way. He's a guy that loves to run things, and I just think the pool is going to be too strong to come back. And I don't think there's probably a spot for him in WWE.
It is going to be interesting to see what happens. Anytime Shane McMahon is on camera, people get excited and think, hey, I wonder if we're going to hear some more insight here. I wonder what's next. What we know for sure is next is the hardest ding dong you ever had if you go to BlueChew.com. Blue Chew has just rolled out Blue Chew Max. It combines the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis into one chewable, and now you can be ready whenever she needs it or he needs it. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And get your first month of Blue Chew free. You see, great sex is just a few clicks away. You sign up at BlueChew.com. You consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA. They're prepared and shipped directly to your door, and the best part is it's all done online. Now, that means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. So make your life easier by getting harder and discover your options at BlueChew.com. We've got a special deal for our listeners. Try your first month of Blue Chew free when you use the promo code WRESTLE. Just pay $5 shipping. That's promo code WRESTLE. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. John, before we jump into our conversation about Godfather, I did want to ask you about the AAA show over the weekend. I enjoyed the show. I have been a AAA fan for a while. I know you have too. I thought this was a fun event. It was it made for easy watching. It was a fun afternoon. I even liked the little details. Like if you took a look at the ring for the very first When Worlds Collide, they had the big Corona logo sponsorship on the canvas, but the ropes were red, white, and blue. Well, I think there is some pushback in Mexico about CMLL presenting themselves as the only 100% authentic, the only 100% Mexican owned, blah, blah, blah. So they went with the ropes and turnbuckles here as the colors of the Mexican flag. So you had green and white and red ropes. I thought it looked really cool. I was a big fan of the presentation, and I felt like they tried to be true to an authentic AAA show. When you had Miss Marcellus there in the ring to get us started, and she was in there with Shawn Michaels and Triple H, and they had all the pageantry with the Spanish, the Mexican national anthem, and the symbolic urn for Antonio Pena. Like, there were so many things that felt truly authentic to AAA, and we saw promos in Spanish and saw subtitles. I dug it. I thought it was cool, and it's no surprise to me because when I saw the act for the first time in person in 2022, I had never seen Mr. Iguana before, but I told Dorian and Conan after, hey, that guy, if this was WWE, he would sell millions of those iguanas. I mean, this is the lucha equivalent, maybe on steroids, of Santino Marella and all those comedic greats that we've had. I mean, this is a AAA version of Orange Cassidy, but that stuffed animal, my gosh, Mr. Iguana is going to be a huge international star. It feels like he got more buzz out of that than almost anybody over the weekend. What do you think of the AAA show, and what do you think of Mr. Iguana's presentation?
I love Mr. Iguana. That kid is awesome. He is so fun. He speaks great English. I don't know where he's from. Is he Mexican?
That's a great question. I don't know.
I saw obviously seen him when I was makeup, but I didn't know if he's from Mexico or he's obviously very fluent in Spanish and English. But he's an Iguana fan. He's not just. I mean, this isn't just some bullshit gimmick that he's carrying around. I mean, he knows all about iguanas. This comes out of a passion that he has for iguanas. And I was talking to him last time about, you need to do some stuff like Ricky Steamboat did, with the dragon and all this stuff, the vignettes, not in the ring, because you're going to have a problem with PETA if you start, bringing live animals in the ring and something gets stepped on or something. But doing the stuff like Ricky Steamboat did with the dragons. But he is just a good person. He knows the business. He's gotten over like $1 million. And I agree with you. This is a merch bonanza.
Yes.
This kid. They're going to sell so many freaking iguanas. And it's not just because he's got a colorful look and a colorful little iguana that goes with him. It's because of him.
Yes.
Again, it's hard to get over. That kid has gotten over in Mexico. I've watched him every time I've gone down there. I'm a huge fan of his. He can work. He can do all this crazy stuff. The people love him, and he has a way of integrating all this crazy, silly stuffed iguana into his match. It's really unique. You got to see this guy, and I think it's gonna change over time. Because what worked in Mexico is going to have to morph a little bit to what works in the United States. Doesn't mean it changes completely, but it's going to change, and he's smart enough to do it.
I'm pumped to see it. I've been a big fan of Mr. Iguana ever since I first saw the idea and the concept. And I have to admit, I didn't get it at first because I caught his match in the middle. So I was somewhere else, and then I come in the ring and he's already in the ring. So I missed the entrance and all that. But when he went on his back and had his arms and legs up in the air the first time, I sort of tilted my head like a dog hearing the Andy Griffith theme song and said to myself, what the hell is this? And the more I watched it, they were selling for the iguana. Man, he's got so many great spots. It's fantastic. And I realize that there's some people who like the strong style or the New Japan style or whatever. And I hear you. However, our friend Dusty Rhodes used to say something like, wrestling should be like a buffet. There should be something there for everybody. That's kind of what I view for Mr. Iguana. Like, if you're targeting kids, if you're looking for fun, not every match needs to be, hellfire and brimstone. There can be some comic relief, some let me up, as Pat Patterson might say, right?
Absolutely. I was down there one of the first times I was there for AAA, the Triple Mania, and last year in August, and they had like a Royal Rumble. There was the rules. I don't know. I still don't know what the rules are, but they had like the little guys, I don't know what the correct name is. Hornswoggle prefers the term midget, so I use that term, but people get mad at me for saying that, but that's what Hornswoggle likes. Dwarfs. But they had big ones, and then they had small ones. So they had different size. So like they're doing like the big ones would do the Andre spot, and the small ones do like the little spots. But this was like part of the Royal Rumble they had, which was not a Royal Rumble, but it was something like a Royal Rumble. Then you had guys coming out. Then you had women coming out. Then you had trans wrestlers coming out. So you had all these little dwarfs, different sizes. You had men, women, and trans all in the match. I'm like, this is the craziest thing I've ever seen. And you're watching it and you're going, this is just fun.
Yes.
It's just fun to watch. Does it make sense? No, it didn't make any sense to me. But in a weird way, you're looking at it going, this is really entertaining. I think people are going to enjoy it. You know, it's a different style. There's different rules. There's no rules. They got a heel referee down there. That guy is freaking awesome, man. Wait till you see this guy, how good he is. It is so fun to watch that heel referee work. He has so much heat. They're going to keep the culture and heritage, I believe, intact. They're going to Americanize it a little bit. I get all that. They're going to Americanize the production, WWE, the interviews and stuff as far as the production on it. This is going to be a lot of fun to watch these AAA guys work.
I can't wait to see what's next for AAA. So happy for Jeremy Borash and Dorian Roldan and the whole crew. It was one hell of a debut, and I can't wait to see what's next for them. But what's next for us is we're going to be talking about the one and only Godfather. And most fans probably remember first seeing, I guess, Charles Wright is his real name, as Papa Shango back in 1992. But that wasn't really his in-ring debut. He'd been in Memphis at that point and Global and even New Japan as the Soul Taker. He had worked in South Atlantic Pro Wrestling under a different gimmick. He had worked for Otto Vons and CWA as Rocky Las Vegas. When was the first time you saw Godfather's work, and when was the first time you met Godfather?
I believe I saw his work as Papa Shango. I think the first time I saw him. I don't think I saw him as a Soul Taker unless I saw him in Dallas. Maybe I did see him. He was huge, and when I say huge, I mean he was. He could stick a beer can on his chest. You know, he's one of those guys that he was massive. You know, like a 500-pound bencher. He was a big dude. He was a biker and part of he ran Vegas, by the way. If you went out to Vegas when he was in charge, anything you wanted, you just had to mention his name. I mean, he ran Vegas. He's a unique person. And I say that, and I love the guy. I'm so glad he's a friend of mine, has been for years. I love him to death. But the first time I saw him in person was in, I believe it was Bremen. I was trying to figure out if it was Bremen or Hanover, but I think it was Bremen. They brought him in, I think, as Papa Shango. And, Ludwig Borga had some issues, and I never saw any of those. There were some like Aryan supremacy claims, and I have no idea if any of that's true or not. I don't think that's what that was over. I've talked to Godfather since. Apparently it was over some match they had in Europe where it was a work, and Ludwig went over and was bragging about, beating Godfather, which is kind of bullshit. It's a work. And Godfather walked in. We're sitting there having some drinks downstairs in the bar, and it may have been Hanover. I'm getting them confused. It was up north Germany. Godfather walked in and just slapped the shit out of Ludwig Borga. I just walked in, slapped there, didn't say a word, just walked in and just jack slapped him. And Borga was a big, tough dude. I mean, this is not something that there he is there. He was a big, tough dude, is known as a big, tough fighter. And Godfather walked in and just absolutely jack slapped him. And that was the first time that I saw him in person.
What a story. I do want to ask you something, because in my research, I don't guess I knew this, or it never even crossed my mind. But he worked as, and I think translated, his name would have been Baron Saturday, and I'm going to screw his name up, but his character in South Atlantic Pro Wrestling was Baron Samedi. I want to spell that for anybody who's curious and looking this up. It's Baron Samedi. And if you were to take a look at that and throw it in your Google machine, what you would see is a look that is almost identical to Papa Shango. And I wonder, because that was a character, I believe, that was a James Bond villain. And I'm wondering, I know this sounds silly, do you think there's a chance that Charles Wright was a big James Bond fan and he saw that character and said, oh, I want to do that? So he used that character's name on the independents, brought that same look to WWE, and Vince changed it to Papa Shango. Do you think that's possible? That's how that happened?
Now, did he have the look before he came to WWE?
Well, I'm not sure what he was wrestling as when he was in South Pacific Wrestling, but I know that the look, if you were to Google that character, man, it is so close to the Papa Shango presentation. Let me see if I can get a picture over to our crack producer here. I mean, it's clearly inspired by that.
Yeah.
I guess I'm asking you, did it ever come up that you know of that Charles Wright is a Bond fan? Is he a James Bond movie fan?
Never, not one time did James Bond ever come up. We rode together. We went out together a lot, and from that time he first slapped Ludwig Borga. That's when we invited him over. This is obviously a pretty cool dude. he just slapped the bad guy. But no, I never came up. Chief helped him a lot with his, I believe what he told me helped him a lot with his character, the shaking and all the stuff that he did. And so I don't know if Godfather had in mind what the character was as much as WWE had in mind, because I know that he was tutored a little bit by Chief and some agents about how to do the Papa Shango character.
We know that we would also see a version of the Charles Wright wrestling persona as Kama Mustafa, the fighting machine. And I know that he had been presented as this mixed martial arts badass. And we know that we're going to see him in things like Brawl for All and others. I'm not debating whether or not he was a badass. I am just curious. Do you know what his martial arts background is legitimately? I know what it is character-wise, that he's the ultimate fighting machine or whatever, but do you know, like, was he a judo guy or a jiu-jitsu guy or a karate guy or a boxing guy? Do you know?
He's a window kata guy. And I say the window kata, he threw a guy through a window one night. And so he's very well versed in window kata. So, okay. And I think, and you got to get him on here and ask him. I think he threw two guys through a window one night because he was on a balcony. He threw a guy through a window, like on the second floor. Because there's a huge story about it. It's one of the reasons I'm gonna get it all screwed up. I've heard the story a million times. I can't remember if he's in college or what. There's a legendary story about him throwing through a guy through a window. And then I know it's when he got kicked out of college or what happened, but he was in a biker gang, and he was brother. That stuff of that he's portraying an MMA guy. I don't know what he was trained as. He's every bit of that. I think he was trained in window kata.
I love that. We're gonna have to make some merch promoting window kata. We saw him with some pretty good boxing skills in there in Brawl for All, and he even stuffed some of Dan Severn's takedown techniques, which. That in and of itself is no big deal. But I love that his story on his way to WWE isn't all that different than yours. He bounces around.
Conrad, if I can interrupt you for just a second, if you don't mind, I want to tell you a little bit of story about that Dan Severn before I forget it. So right before he fights Dan Severn, now Severn is the UFC champion. That's, when there were no rules. He's a bad dude. He's one of the best, greatest fighters of all time. Godfather is about to fight Dan Severn in a legit shoot fight. And Gerald Briscoe comes to me and says, "Have you seen Charles?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Okay, where is he?" I said, "He'll be here." And he goes, "Well, we got to get him in the ring." And I said, "He'll be here." He goes, "Where is he?" I said, "You don't want to know." Godfather was in the back about to fight the UFC champion in a shoot fight. The UFC champion that won when there were no rules. And he's got his boxing gloves on, and he's like this, and he's smoking a joint.
I love that so much.
He's like, they're getting smoking a joint with his boxing gloves on. And Jerry Briscoe goes, "You got to be kidding me." I go, "No, he's just smoking a joint." Then he goes out there and has a hell of a fight. It was a great fight.
It really is interesting to hear about this guy's story, because I don't think there's a lot of guys who have a story quite like him. The idea that you're about to be in a shoot fight on global television against a UFC fighter, legitimate badass, and your solution is, let me just get myself and my mind right and prepared for this. I'm going to smoke a J with my gloves.
That's how little he cared. I mean, he don't care. He's been in a million freaking fights. I don't know if he's ever lost one. Bart got him with a shot, and they said he lost the decision to Severn, but he lost any fights. That's a world-class tough dude. He's back there. It's crazy. Smoking a freaking joint, about to fight Dan Severn, the beast.
It really is unbelievable. I do want to ask, when you think about your career, I mean, you went through the auto experience, and he did too. Do you think Godfather looks back at his time with Otto as fondly as you do? Because I can hear the love in your voice and the fondness of, maybe you guys weren't making a ton of money and maybe it wasn't the easiest schedule or whatever it is. But I know that you look back at that time fondly. Do you think Godfather does too?
I think so. We rode together for years, and we're still good friends. And we've talked a lot about Otto and how much we enjoyed it over there. As far as I know, I'd be very, very surprised if he had a different opinion than what I have. From what I understand, he had the same opinion that I did. It was a wonderful experience. And the thing is, you're wrestling great talent every single night. You're with great people over there. I mean, those wrestlers over there were fantastic. Otto was great to work for. Mick McMichael, the referee, DDA, those guys were wonderful to be around. They were just good people. It was a wonderful place to be. And I think Godfather felt the same way.
We know he's going to get his big break when he comes to the World Wrestling Federation. We mentioned earlier that I think he drew inspiration from the name he used when he was overseas. Of course, that was Baron Samedi, and I'm probably butchering that because I'm a hillbilly, but it's Baron Samedi. That's the name of a Bond villain. And then later we know he's going to be called Papa Shango. But that is the look.
Good research. That's good research. I love this. This is good. This is good stuff.
I mean, to me, that looks similar. I think Silva even has another cartoon Look at that. I mean, that to me feels like clear inspiration for Papa Shango. JJ Dillon, go ahead. JJ would write a book called Wrestlers Are Like Seagulls. And he says, I was also responsible for and will take the blame for Papa Shango. I made the suggestion that he should stare at his opponents, and when he gets to the ring, during which time the arena lights would go down for a few seconds, when the lights came back on, his opponent would be lying on the mat with his feet on fire. I thought it would be different and unique, which it was, but a lot of people thought the idea was horrible, so I'll take the heat for that one. I'll admit, I was 11, I think, when this happened, and I thought it was badass. I still think it's cool now because it's different. Yeah. What did you think when you first saw it in 1992, and has your opinion changed about it over time?
Nope. I thought it was good then. Undertaker's coming out and he's striking lightning at people. There's nothing that's no more believable than this. And people now think that's the greatest thing ever. Back then there was all kinds of pushback against this. I remember I was in the territories when all this was happening, and people were, they're doing these casket matches. They've got this Papa Shango. They got this Undertaker. Yeah, you've got this guy named Undertaker. Boy, he sucks, doesn't he? He'll never draw a dime. Ole was right about that. I mean, and all these guys were bashing these guys about how they're doing all this ridiculous shit and stuff. Yeah, they become some of the biggest names in the world. They're Hall of Famers now, and they still make a fortune going around doing autograph sessions or whatever they want to do because they are such big names, and they could do it. If you had some idiot doing this, the Undertaker character or Papa Shango character, yeah, it would come across stupid. You had two of the most talented guys in the world doing this. And by the way, these guys are best friends that are doing these crazy characters. Just happen to be, doing the crazy characters and best friends, but very smart guys. I don't know if anybody else could have done Papa Shango. I don't think anybody else could have done Undertaker, but there was a lot of pushback all over the wrestling world about all the stupid shit they were doing. And every one of those guys who were talking about stupid shit they were doing, they would have left that second if Vince would have called and go to do stupid shit, as they called it.
They're going to try a pretty infamous angle in 1992. This happens in April 29th in Syracuse, New York. There's about 4,500 fans there. And Papa Shango is going to find himself in a storyline, an angle, if you will, with the Ultimate Warrior. And I guess the Warrior had a match scheduled against Brian Knobbs of the Nasty Boys. And before the match, both of the Nasty Boys attack the Ultimate Warrior and steal his wristbands. Warrior makes his own save, and he wins the match. Shango gets the wristband and puts a curse on it. And the Ultimate Warrior starts selling like his wrist was hurt. And Shango winds up attacking the Ultimate Warrior, who winds up doing a stretcher job. But eventually, the big reveal is the Warrior's going to be throwing up all over everybody backstage. He's been cursed. We would even see a time when you get the ooze over the face and the whole deal. I guess this is the era where people who are maybe fans of Jim Crockett Promotions or Jack Briscoe, maybe they're like, okay, this is a little too far. We are very sports entertainment here. But again, as an 11-year-old kid, I thought it was pretty cool. Did you think it was too far when we started doing voodoo curses in wrestling? Or were you a fan of that?
No, they had an invisible guy in England back in the 60s. Let's stop with the hypocritical bullshit. These guys are, and those guys were shooters over there, and they had some invisible guy that would wrestle. They'd work with an invisible person. And look it up. I mean, they've always had crazy stuff like this. There's always been, not always, starting in the late 30s when he first started bringing in the characters, then Gorgeous George, and then he started bringing in all these crazy characters. And so you've always had things like this. But back in the turn of the 1900, you had the Terrible Turk, who sunk in a ship off Nova Scotia, and they said the reason he sunk was because he was holding on to his gold belt, and that's why he died. The guy dies, and they still bury him as a heel. So it's just, they've always had this. They've always had characters that were crazy, that were outlandish. It's just when you're in a different territory and you're not making money, you love to bash it because you're not there. That's all it was. And if it was done well, it drew money. And Godfather did it well. And so, no, I didn't have a problem with this. But, yeah, there was pushback everywhere. Everybody thought they were killing the business. But they said Vince was killing the business forever since Vince came along. That was nothing new.
Well, somebody who's been killing breakfast, lunch, and dinner lately is Factor. Make this your best season yet with nutritious 2-minute meals from Factor. Eating well has never been this easy. You just heat up and enjoy. It's going to give you more time to do what you want. You can get outside and enjoy the weather instead of prepping and cooking indoors. Factor meals arrive fresh and ready to eat, and they're perfect for any active lifestyle. With 45 different weekly menu options, you can pick gourmet meals that fit your goals. Choose from Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Keto, and more. Factor's going to power your day with satisfying breakfasts, on-the-go lunches, premium dinners, and all the guilt-free snacks and desserts you need. And it's easy to savor more this spring. Factor meals pack in the flavor with none of the fuss. This is not such a well-hidden secret in wrestling anymore. Guys travel with Factor. Once upon a time when John and, well, even Papa Shango were breaking in, your bags didn't even have wheels on them. So guys had to just carry their luggage everywhere they went. These days, most guys have a carry-on, which is going to be maybe their title belt and certainly their gear. And they're going to have another carry-on, and that's their food. People travel with food bags now, and it's because of things like Factor. Factor specifically is a favorite in wrestling locker rooms because they know they're going to get all the protein they need. They know they've got Calorie Smart options. They've got keto. And by the way, did I mention it tastes great? We're talking truly premium ingredients. They've got shrimp, they've got steak, they've got everything you're looking for that's going to taste great and fuel you right. And you don't have to worry about all the bad stuff, because if you're trying to live on the road, man, it's tough to do that. It's tough to eat well and know what you're eating and that it's good for you. Factor makes it easy, but it also makes it easy for us at home. Maybe you've got to run kids to ball practice, or maybe you're doing double duty, or with the longer days, you're going to spend more time outside. And, well, I don't want to have to break up pool time to run down to the grocery store and then knock off early so I can go cook. Let Factor do the heavy lifting for you. It's going to taste great, and you're going to feel good about what you're doing. Go right now and get started at factormeals.com/wrestle50off. Use our code wrestle50off, and you'll get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. That's code wrestle50off at factormeals.com/wrestle50off for 50% off plus free shipping. Listen, there's a pretty famous story, and I know that, he's told it before, but from your perspective, did you ever have a conversation with Charles Wright, the former Godfather, about the Papa Shango run-in at WrestleMania VIII? It's become an infamous story where supposedly he missed his cue and he was coming in at the wrong time. And I know that the heat, I believe, goes on an agent. It's not necessarily his fault, but I am curious.
Who was the agent?
Well, I'll let him say that. I don't know that he necessarily wants to have that out there, but I have heard him say that it wasn't necessarily on him. He was there and no one told him to go. Have you heard that story before?
Nope, I have not heard it. I got to hear the story though. I got to guess who the agent was. So probably wasn't Briscoe, was it?
I doubt it. Let me say this. Here's the story just so we can set it up. The main event of WrestleMania that year, we all expected to be Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair.
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't drawing that well. We've talked about that in the archives just a few weeks ago with Mr. Briscoe. So they pivoted. So there's a world title match somewhere in the middle of the card with Ric Flair and Randy Savage. Miss Elizabeth's kind of in the middle. Savage becomes the new world champion. Fabulous match. But what closes the show, what goes on last, what's the true main event, is Hulk Hogan, who on the way to this show was teasing that this might be the last time we see Hulk Hogan. There's lots of rumors and speculation that The steroids.
And by the way, Mr. Briscoe has Hogan's boots from that match where he signed them.
He has WrestleMania VIII boots.
I believe it's WrestleMania. Yeah, when Hogan thought it was his last match.
I love that. That's super cool.
You know, and by the way, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but hey, we were talking about Ole Anderson last week and doing the blood oath. You know, when they had in the hotel room,
yes.
You know, Ole wanted to do the blood oath. Mr. Briscoe has the knife still that Ole cut his forehead with. So Jerry used to have a knife in his bag, and Ole, and they were all drunk, and Ole wants to make a blood oath, and Jack goes, "I'm not cutting my head, you dumbass." And Ole grabs the knife out of Jerry's bag and sticks it in his head, and he wants to create a blood oath. So they're all blood brothers. Jerry just sent me a picture of the knife. He still has it.
What, did Jerry throw anything away?
I don't know. Jerry didn't throw it. No. I don't even know what he would have kept Manhattan. He'd have never sold it.
If it, we're gonna get in trouble eventually. That feels like a Papa Shango gimmick. Like he saved the blood oath knife. Like
he did. That is true. He saved the blood oath knife. I'll get him to put a picture of it out today on Twitter.
My gosh. So listen, as the story goes here in the main event, we've got Hulk Hogan in what might be his last match against Sid Vicious. And there's a leg drop from Hulk Hogan, and we all know what that means. Well, supposedly Papa Shango was supposed to be there to break up the pin so Sid Vicious didn't lose with the leg drop. Apparently, they were a little behind giving Shango the cue, so Sid has to kick out of the leg drop. Unbelievably, Sid has to kick out of Hulk Hogan's leg drop in the main event. Here comes Papa Shango, and of course, it made way for a returning Ultimate Warrior. You and I have never really talked about this before, John, but for years and years, a lot of wrestling fans all over the world, I'm talking about kids now at this point, were under the belief that, well, this is the second Ultimate Warrior. The first Ultimate Warrior died, and this is a new guy under the same gimmick. And what's crazy to me is it's 1992. So it's not like there's the internet. It's not like all of us kids were logging on to AOL and getting our scoops, right? So how in the world does that get passed around and become an urban legend with little kids in Ohio and Canada and Alabama that, hey, that's the second Ultimate Warrior. The first one died. I mean, you said even you had heard that. Where does that silly shit come from?
And how it got spread around. It was unbelievable. Right. I mean, it was just unreal. You know, I've always been such a big fan of wrestling before television, you know, before the 1940s, when guys like Londos and Sonnenberg and Strangler Lewis and Gotch would go into a town and you draw these, 40,000 people. How do you do that before television and internet and all this? It's just crazy. How do you have this rumor go around about Ultimate Warrior is dead and they've replaced him with some cyborg or something? And this is not the same Ultimate Warrior. Yeah, oh yeah, I heard the same thing. It's a crazy rumor. It's hard to believe you had two goofs that would be as wild as the Ultimate Warrior. I hope there weren't two in the world.
We know that eventually we get.
By the way, I digress. I'm sorry. I was sitting with Warrior one time, and he always liked me, and I liked him, by the way. So don't get me wrong. He was nice as he could be to me. I guess the association from Dallas and Skandor Akbar, where we both started. And he's sitting there one day, and he's got a Warrior jacket on. He's got a Warrior ball cap on. He's got a Warrior Halliburton. He's got a Warrior logo on the front of his jacket, and he's got tassels on his sleeves. That's how he's walking through the airport. And he's sitting there talking to me, and he goes, I don't know why these fucking marks won't leave me alone.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I don't know either. No idea.
Yeah,
he was nuts.
I've often wondered about that because I had a conversation once with Jim Ross because sometimes if he's going to go make a personal appearance, I mean, I hate to break it to fans, but when he just goes down to breakfast in Jacksonville Beach, he's not wearing a cowboy hat. He's just regular old Jim Ross. But if he's going to make a personal appearance, people expect the cowboy hat. So he could pretty much make his way around the airport unbothered. But man, when he puts on the black cowboy hat, it turns into a meet and greet.
Yeah. That's a freaking shining billboard. Yeah. Because it's hard. You can't hide that. Yeah, 100%.
So it would have been easier for the Ultimate Warrior to blend in, even with his, massive frame, if he was just in gym clothes and didn't have all the Warrior regalia with him. But
yeah, he actually had the arm tassels on his jacket and in the airport. And then he says, I don't know why these fucking marks won't leave me alone. I don't know either.
The only thing that would have been better would have been if he had an assistant or a handler who followed behind him with a boombox playing the theme song. Papa Shango is going to get a pretty big time opportunity. It happens in a down period of the company, November of 92. Clearly business is down, way down. And he finds himself wrestling Bret Hart for the WWF title on Saturday night's main event. Now, once upon a time, that would have been a really big deal. Do you think, the real life Charles Wright cared about things like that? I've seen some guys who get really excited about their opportunities and their moments, whether it's a title shot or a title run or any sort of main event opportunity, like it means something to them. And then I've talked to other guys who are like, just another day at the office. I got paid well. Which one of those do you think Charles Wright is?
Godfather's just very, very smart guy. And I guarantee you, he noticed the crowd was down. Not his fault. Business sucked at that point. After Hogan's run was over, they always say business was cyclical. It's not cyclical. It was talent driven. So when you had a guy like Hogan, you put everything behind this guy. And when Hogan takes the leave of absence or something, business goes down until you find the next guy. So that's why it's cyclical, and you're in that down trough because of it. Bret liked Charles a lot. Charles was a good worker and a very tough guy. But Bret really had a lot of respect for Godfather and would want to have a great match. And they do. Those guys could work. But I guarantee you, Godfather noticed that. I get my big break. You have to. You have to notice. You get your big break. When I got to WWE in '95, I thought I finally got here, and business sucks. I missed the run. That's what you're thinking. So yeah, absolutely, 100%. He noticed it.
It's interesting to take a look at his career, because after being in such a high profile opportunity in 1992, working with the Ultimate Warrior before WrestleMania, after WrestleMania, he's involved somehow in the WrestleMania main event. He's going to main event a Saturday night's main event for the world title against Bret Hart.
Vince loved Charles.
Yes.
Loved him like a son. I mean, loved him. He called him one time. He said, Vince had that Boss Hoss motorcycle.
Okay.
Those Boss Hogs, like with the big 350 engine. Remember those big things?
Yes.
Vince wrecked it and almost killed himself. You remember he broke his hip or his pelvis or something. Vince had a really bad wreck on it that wasn't really reported because he was driving probably 120 miles an hour and probably under the influence. I don't know if he was or not, so nobody's going to repeat that on the internet. But Vince was definitely flying.
He was a serious speeder. That's not a secret. Yeah.
Yeah. But Charles had it up against the wall, and he's got the thing revved, and he's got the wheels spinning, smoke going everywhere, and he looks around, and there's Vince. And Vince says, "Charles, would you do that to your bike?" And Godfather goes, like a little kid, he goes, "No." He goes, "Then don't do it to mine." But Vince didn't care. He thought he was funny. Vince loved Charles. Somebody else, Vince would have fired him and probably sued him. But Vince, that was like his son.
I want to ask a little bit about, when he disappears, because it does feel like he's phased down pretty heavily in 1993. He spends a little bit of time in Memphis working with Jerry Lawler and then Owen Hart, but then it feels like he's just gone, and he's going to work some indie dates. He'll work some auto tours. He'll be doing that as Papa Shango, which is cool, I guess. Maybe it's pre-internet or maybe he had permission. I don't know. But when he comes back in late 94, he's the Extreme Fighting Machine. And this doesn't, again, 94 WWF, not exactly hot. It's not going to be his best run in the business. But I've always felt like was a play on words for chemo, which was a UFC fighter. It's worth a Google. If you want to throw that in your Google machine, you can type in UFC chemo and you'll see.
Okay, UFC fan. Who grabbed chemo's ponytail on top and was holding on to it? Was from the bottom. Was it Gracie?
Oh my gosh. I wish if you wouldn't put me on the spot, I would have known that.
Chemo had that, ponytail, had his hair up in the thing, and back then, there were no rules, and somebody grabbed that ponytail to hold it and to control his head. And I don't know if it was Gracie. I can't remember who it was. Chemo was a bad dude.
And he used to. There was one fight where he carried a crucifix. He carried.
That's right. Carried a huge crucifix all the way to the ring.
It's crazy. Why don't you think, the Extreme Fighting Machine? Why don't you think? Again, as a reminder, the UFC is getting hot. They debut in late 93. There's a lot of controversy. We're going to see, politicians like Mr. McCain go out there and call it human cockfighting, but it's called Ultimate Fighting Championship. Well, one of their stars is Chemo. So now we've got Kama, the extreme fighting machine. It just doesn't really hit. Do you think that this is a case of timing? Like in a few years later during the Attitude Era, I think Papa Shango would have been an even bigger star. And I think a few years after that, when the UFC really got hot, having a UFC gimmick could have worked in. Are both of those gimmicks just a case of bad timing?
100%. No doubt about it. He had Warrior when Warrior was on his way down. You replaced Hogan. We've talked about it before. You replaced Hogan with Warrior. You should have put a mailman at least in between to give a chance for Warrior to be able to carry that title. Nobody carried that title after Hogan carried it, especially the way he got it off the Giant. And so you had a downtime against a down wrestler in the Warrior who was not on his peak anymore, but on the way down. You're trying to rejuvenate him. And you also got an opponent that you're trying to bring in. Tough timing for Papa Shango. It was just bad as it could be. Plus, business was bad. Business was bad here, too. Vince always said he hated to be ahead of the curve. He wanted to be just behind the curve. It's like they say, which Mr. Briscoe hates this, pioneers get arrows, settlers get land. And, the first people there are the ones that have to build the plan for the rest. You want to be just behind the curve. And Vince was ahead of the curve on the UFC with Kama. If he had been a few years later, it'd have been established. I think it'd been better. Kama was a good character, and Charles could do that character. He could do all the fighting. I really don't know what his background was other than Wendo Kata. Right. But he obviously could do all the kick fighting. He could do everything. He's a trained fighter. He's a good fighter, and he could have done really well with that. But I think the timing was just horrible. Plus, business was terrible. Nothing got over during that time. I mean, you can't hardly name a character during that time that got over consistently, that was created during that time. You may have named characters that came along after that became huge names that suffered through that, but you didn't know characters that were built during that time.
We should take just a minute here and remind everybody that he comes back in June of 97, and this is really going to be the biggest push of his career. Of course, the WWF is still, they're scrapping to try to do anything they can to keep up with the momentum known as the NWO and WCW. So June of 97 is when we have the hair pulling incident with Brett and Shawn, and hey, what's really going to happen? We just had our worst WrestleMania in history based on buys and revenue at WrestleMania 13. And there's lots of up in the air about, hey, is this company even going to make it? Like, we know that we're just a few months away from Vince having to visit with Brett and say, I'm sorry, I can't afford your contract. So things are not looking great. But man, what an opportunity that presents itself for the real life Charles Wright when he comes back here in June of 97 and joins the Nation of Domination. And this is when, Farouk had fired all of the non-D'Lo Brown members of the Nation, and he promised a new version of the group that's bigger, better, and a whole lot blacker. And this version creates an opportunity for Kama Mustafa to come back. And what a look. We know eventually this is going to evolve into the Godfather character, but it's this last run that starts in June of 97 that winds up being the one that makes him a star. And as a reminder, we're 5 years into his WWE existence. I mean, the Papa Shango character was 1992. This is a big deal for him. What did you think of him as a member of the Nation?
We were all huge fans of the Nation. You look at this group, that is just a group of badasses, and they look like badasses. I mean, I remember seeing Doom back in the day and thinking, my God, man, how'd those guys not get the titles and just hold them for the next 20 years? I remember looking at these guys when they're standing out there on stage with their fists raised and going, my God, how do these guys not control this company for the next 20 years? That was one of the most badass groups I've ever seen in my life. And to this day, I don't know if there's a more badass group than that. I don't know who you could name that's a bigger, more badass group of people than that group right there. I mean, could you name any group that's a bigger badass group than those guys?
I mean, it's got to be up there. And what a way to debut him too. It's a tag match. It's going to be The Undertaker, who's had a problem with Farouk. They've been, they even had a title match on pay-per-view that summer. And Ahmed Johnson, obviously, he's got a long storied history with Farouk going back to 1996, when Ahmed put Farouk on the shelf. So it's natural that this is going to be a high-profile match when you've got Ahmed Johnson and The Undertaker on one side, Farouk and a mystery partner on the other. The mystery partner is a returning / debuting Kama Mustafa, who gets the pin over The Undertaker. So when he comes back, he's going to beat The Undertaker, and Ahmed Johnson never tagged in. So after the match, Ahmed reveals that he too is a member of the Nation. So as much as I love that version of the Nation that Silva just threw up there graphically, the old photo, in an alternate universe, if Ahmed doesn't get hurt, he would have been a part of that group too. And Ahmed Johnson had the injury bug in 95, 96, and 97, just some bad timing, some bad luck. But I don't think he ever realized what his potential could have been in the WWF. But imagine in an alternate universe, if Ahmed Johnson was a part of that group and he was healthy, it could have totally changed Ahmed's career, don't you think?
It could have, but he wouldn't have lasted. He was not ousted for injuries. He was ousted because there was a personality conflict with the group.
All righty.
Yeah. And I think that's been told. I'm not trying to tell anything that's not out there. I mean, it's that they didn't get along, and they wanted him out of the group, and that's what happened. There was a personality conflict with them. They had a backstage incident, and which has been documented with D'Lo and Rock, and they went to Vince, and I think Ahmed lasted a very, very, I can't remember what it was. It was like a day. It was a very short time, but no, it was not injuries. It was a personality conflict that with the Nation that they, for whatever reason, that would have never worked.
Let's talk about something else that may not have worked. There's been lots of discussion that there was a conversation, or at least maybe even plans, that we would have returned Papa Shango to the on-screen. So instead of him coming back as Kama Mustafa and joining the Nation of Domination, what if Charles Wright had come back as Papa Shango? There was even a board game, and there were official WWF promo photos that were out there for a more serious version of Papa Shango that didn't pan out. And we've even heard from Bruce before that there were hypothetical spinoffs. Do you remember there being chatter or discussion about Papa Shango coming back in that 96, 97 era instead of what we actually got with the Nation? And why don't you think it happened?
I think it's the realism push that we had. We had gone through some, a lot of characters, and all of a sudden you have Scott and Kevin go down to WCW. I think Scott and Kevin changed everything in a very positive way, a great way, and they created the Monday Night Wars. But they're using their real names, and I think that changed a lot that was going on with WWE. And so I think that killed Papa Shango as much as anything, was the fact that we got to compete with these guys down south who are kicking our ass. And they're doing it with just old-fashioned storylines of real people and not characters. And so we had to compete. We felt like we had to compete on their level. And I think that hurt it more than anything.
I do want to ask you a little bit about, the way the transition happens from Kama to Godfather. Inexplicably, and I don't even know how or why this happened, we started to see him referred to almost as a nickname as the Godfather. Well, of course, in 1998, when there's on the other channel, Goldberg is beating Hulk Hogan for the world title. And on this show, we've got DX parroting the Nation. Regrettably, they did some things that you wouldn't do in 2025. But one of the things that happens in that skit is Billy Gunn, who's trying to portray the Godfather, says something like, "Pimps up, hose down, what's up?" or something like that. And next thing you know, we start presenting the Godfather as an actual pimp. Do you know anything about the backstory of how this character evolved into the pimp? Is it simply Billy Gunn saying that as a parody, as a fun thing, and then they went with it? Or was that the plan all along?
Nope. None of the above. Absolutely none of the above. Now, Billy, not taking away from Billy, he may have seen what we did in house shows. I don't know exactly what the timeline was. No. The Godfather got created on the house shows. 100%. Godfather's told the story a million times. So have I. I was there. He was there. We're the only two that were there. So we're working on the house shows, and for whatever reason, we weren't over. Now, I can understand me being over, but he's with the Nation, and the Nation, it kind of fizzled out a little bit. We're working the popcorn match, which for those that don't know is the match after intermission. you work a match and you just try to get out there, you stay in the ring, you do something real fast and do something with a lot of action, try to get fans back in their seats, get them ready for the second part of the show, which is the most important part because you're leading up to the main event. That's the popcorn match. Get the folks back from eating their popcorn. Me and Godfather are working popcorn match every single night, and it's not working. So you want to know exactly how the Godfather was created? I'm going to tell you exactly how the Godfather was created. So we're sitting there every night. Jack Lanza is the agent. He's working with us. These matches, that match I had with Vader looks like a sissy match compared to what me and Godfather were doing. We were beating the shit out of each other. We couldn't get over, and we're hitting each other harder and harder and harder. Every night we're going out there. We're trying to get the people. No one cares. I mean, we're going out there working 10, 12 minutes, and it is a fight. We're hitting each other with everything we can. It's snug. It's stiff. It's all this stuff. We're staying in the ring. It was good stuff, but nobody cared. So finally one day, Charles comes to me and he goes, hey, man, I got an idea. He said, I'm just going to go on the mic and say something. And he goes, maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't. I said, Charles, we do whatever you want. I said, whatever we're doing is not working. And he goes, yeah, it's not. So he tells Lanza, he goes, Jack, can I get on the mic? Jack loved Charles. And he goes, Charles, do whatever you want. And he goes, well, I'm going to say some stuff about some hoes and stuff. He goes, Charles, say whatever you want. Just do something entertaining. So he gets out there. He gets on the microphone. I have no idea what he's going to say, Conrad. None whatsoever. And he goes, Big John. And he goes, now you know exactly who I am. And I sat there and I'm shaking my head. I have no idea what he's saying, where he's going, nothing. I said, yeah, I know what you are. He goes, now you know, I'm a pimp. And I got backstage. I got the finest hose you've ever seen in Charlotte, North Carolina, or wherever the hell we were. He goes, there's some fine hose back there. And he said, if you will just leave right now and get counted out, let me win this match. He said, you get all those hose. Every one of them. They're the finest hoes in the world. They're going to treat you like $1 million. They're all waiting for you, those fine hoes. He said, just go back there and get them. He said, it's all you got to do. So I'm sitting there looking at him. And I'm like, really? Really? And so I get out of the ring. I'm all excited to go back to the ring. And he goes, man, just like a dumbass redneck. He going to take them hoes over. And when I do, I come back in. Whatever the finish was, I like duck something, hit him with a clothesline, or if it was hit hoe train or whatever it was, he hit me with something, whatever it was. It wasn't the hoe train then. Anyway, we do the finish. The place went crazy. Wow. I mean, it went crazy. I come back in, and we did one move. And so we come back, Lanza goes, oh my God, Charles, that was fantastic. He goes, try it again tomorrow and try this. And so now Jack's into it because he had heard what Godfather was going to say. So now we're doing this loop. We got like 8-10 shows in a row. Every night he's coming out. He goes, Big John, you know who I am. I got the finest hose you've ever seen right here in Columbia, South Carolina. All you got to do. And every night we do it, and we get a bigger pop every night because he was getting better and better and better at it. So when he gets to TV, Vince pulls him aside. And he said, Charles, I need to talk to you. I understand this pimp thing has legs. Oh. And I think it surprised Charles as much as anybody. And he goes, Charles, what? He goes, we need to do this on TV. He goes, and then all of a sudden they come up with the name The Godfather. Then they decide he goes, what do you need to do this? And Charles says, well, I actually need hose. I actually need real hose. That'll be there. And he goes, we can call it the hoe train. And Vince's like, oh my God, we call it the hoe train. They created this whole thing was created over about a month because me and Charles weren't getting over in the house shows.
My God. That right there.
That's the whole story. I saw Charles tell this on Undertaker's podcast, and even Taker had never heard the story, which I couldn't believe. But yeah, that's why the whole thing was created. The whole thing 100% was created because we had the popcorn match. We weren't getting over, and Charles is so entertaining. He just got on the microphone one day, and I'm playing the dumb Texan, and we start for the first time. We start to get over, and Vince heard about it from Lanza and puts this thing on television. And the whole Godfather legend was created from that.
What a fucking story! I mean, wow, what a cool story.
He had some hoes one night. It was so funny. We like you get these hoes. Hoes. You're not supposed to call them that. That's what they're called wrestling. Okay, so they're called hoes. So they had a hoe train. You can't have a hoe train if you don't have hoes. So they're hoes. So he got these hoes in from somewhere, and here I go. They're called. And they bring them in, and they are Conrad, they are ugly. I mean, they look like Dave Silva in a dress is what they look like. Not that I've seen Dave Silva in a dress, but if I saw Dave Silva in a dress, I would think Dave's not a good-looking hoe is what I would think. I don't know that for sure. Maybe Dave's a good-looking hoe. I don't know how kind of hoe Dave is, but I assume Dave's not a good-looking hoe. But these hoes were ugly. So he's going like, oh, my God, the fans are going to shit on me. And Ron goes, now what would you say to the fans? And Godfather goes, yeah. So Godfather gets out there, grabs the microphone, and the fans are like heckling him because he's got these ugly women. And he goes, now listen, which one of you guys out there with a six-pack wouldn't do every one of these hoes? And then all the whole fans go, yeah!
My God.
He was beyond entertaining. He asked us one day, he had obviously smizzed a little bit. He goes, you think I can go out there and say mother funker? Ron goes, Charles, that's a really bad idea. I don't think that's a good idea.
I think mother funker is a good idea. That could have
He
worked.
thought it was too.
I mean,
he was so high one time. So I worked with him after this. After this, it was great because he had the hose with him. And one time we're sitting there working, and I said, Godfather hit me the hoe train. He goes, nah, don't worry about it. We'll do it tomorrow. I go, Charles, you're going over. It's your finish. He goes, sorry, I'm high. Okay, it's all right. Hit me with it.
Did you ever try to outsmoke Godfather?
Worst, dumbest thing I've ever. I mean, I've done some really dumb things. I mean, really stupid things. But yes, it was one of the dumbest things me and Ron ever did. To this day, me and Ron could live to be probably 1 million and not do anything dumber than this. So we were in Buffalo, and me and Ron had gone out, and Buffalo just. I mean, it's like Iowa. Birds fly upside down because there's nothing worth shitting on in Buffalo. And so we go out in Buffalo, and it's just horrible because it's Buffalo. And we come back in like at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, whenever the bars close, and we still want to have some fun. So we go down and knock on Charles's door. We're banging on it. Get up, Godfather! Get up! Get up! Get up! Get up! Get up! And he goes, we're gonna smoke with you. We're gonna smoke you out. So he gets up, comes to the door. He goes, "Come on in, guys. Come on in." He doesn't even bother him. It doesn't faze him one bit because guys were pretty easy going back then. So he brings us into his room. We're going to smoke you. Light up that stuff. Within an hour, me and Ron both looked at him and go, can we leave? Would you let us, please? We promise we'll never bother you again if you'll just let us go to our room because we think you're going to have to call an ambulance if we stay here much longer. Yeah, it was possibly the dumbest thing we ever did.
I do want to ask you about the APA because you have in your notes to me here today, original APA with Taker. What does that mean?
Godfather and Charles. I've always thought they were the original APA. In my opinion, those two guys.
And Charles. Who are we talking about?
Godfather and Taker. I'm sorry. Taker and Charles were best friends, and I guess still are. And man, those guys. You talk about legendary. I don't give a shit what you say. Look, they're both crazy, but guys like Piper that would party like crazy, man, they got nothing on those two guys. I mean, those two guys were insane. They went out every night. They would drink. They'd be at the plane at 6 o'clock the next morning. I mean, they were the original APA. Those two guys were scary. They drank so much. I'll tell you a funny story. We're in East St. Louis one time. And, you've been in East St. Louis. It's, yeah, woo, buddy. So we're over there about 3 o'clock in the morning. And Charles looks at me. I'm with Barry Windham. And, we're at one of those nights. And by the way, I believe it was that night that Savio Vega had a bunch of I'm going to get my time frame messed up. Savio Vega had a bunch of the little guys from Puerto Rico.
Okay.
They had all come in like in an overcoat, one on top of the other's shoulders. But they buttoned up overcoat up where it looked like it was just one tall person. So they pay one cover. And then when they come in there, they take off the overcoat and you realize it's two little guys on top of each other. Everybody thought it was funny. They'd run around and it was a wild night. And so Charles looks at me about 3 o'clock in the morning and goes, I think I can take you. And I know what he's talking about, but I don't want to acknowledge it. And I said, take me where? And he goes,
take me where?
Yeah. That was my, And he goes, I think I can kick your ass. You're a big, tough guy. I think I can kick your ass. And I said, Charles, I don't want to fight you. You're my friend. And I know where this is going. And he goes, all right, listen. And he goes, let's go outside and fight. We'll just settle it and come back in. And I'm like, oh shit, you got to be kidding me. Oh my God. It's big. For one, he's a big dude, and two, he's my friend.
Yes.
Like, oh fuck. But I can't not go. And so finally I said, okay, under protest, I'm going. So we go outside. I thought, man, I got to fight this big dude who's my friend now. And I was like, this is terrible. But that's like his biker mentality. He wants to prove, he wants me to prove that I belong with the group, And I walk out there, and as soon as I do, before anything could happen, he grabs me and hugs me. He goes, I love you. I just want to see you come out here. He goes, you're the best. I'm like, oh my God. I
can't imagine. By the way,
we stayed out there so long that because it was funny, at that point it's funny. He's just having a good time, he just ribbed, I don't know, he's ribbing, whatever he's doing. He's my friend. He's having fun. Well, we're out there so long that Taker and Wyndham kind of come and look around the corner just to see if like somebody's dead at this point.
How great is that? Let's also talk about, when we're thinking about these characters that he's played through the years. I know that occasionally in real life, there's got to be some interesting interactions with fans or maybe non-fans. You have in here, there's a note. Guy tells him in Boston to wear gloves in a gym. What is that about?
Oh, this is great. Godfather can be the grumpiest man on the planet. If you see him now, we're down in Raleigh, and I think I can say it. Well, I can say it because the cops obviously didn't care. And we're signing like a WrestleCon or something, and he comes up, and he didn't have any Smiths with him. And him without Smith is a different. They called him Bear. Everybody calls him Bear. I never always called him Charles or Godfather, but a lot of guys call him Bear from his old biker nickname, and a lot of guys still call him that. Well, Bear had come out, and he is grumpy. And like, oh my God, me and Ryan are like, get us away from him, because you don't want to be around him when he's grumpy, And he didn't have any Smiths. So finally, he sits there, and finally Gerald Briscoe goes, hey, Charles, take this. And he gives him like not a vape, but like a joint. So he lights up this joint indoors, and there's two cops sitting next to him. And the cops are just, he's like, as soon as he does, he goes, and he just changes into Godfather at this point. It's like this, like that doll, that turns the face. And all of a sudden now he's like friendly as he can be. And he's sitting there talking to the police, and he's smoking this joint. They're like, we probably should leave at this point, because we don't need to be here for this. So, and what were we talking about?
Just being in Boston, being told.
Oh, being in Boston. So anyway, we're in Boston, and this is at the gym. He's a strong dude, man. I mean, him and going to the gym with him and Ron Simmons was fun. So I'm sitting there at the gym, and some guy tells me something about not cheating, and I look at this guy like, who the fuck are you? I mean, some idiot. And he says something to Ron. So Ron goes, no, wait a minute. He's going to say something to Charles next. So Godfather's over there. We're sitting there just like watching behind the machines, and Godfather's over there doing something. And the guy walks up to Charles, and he goes, hey, man, you should wear some gloves. It's better on your hands. And Charles goes, man, I look like a bitch. Who the fuck? And all of a sudden now it's just Charles is chasing this guy out of the gym. It was just, he went like that. He went turned into Bear. And we thought somebody's about to get murdered.
I got to ask, I know you were not usually a Smiz partaker, but I'm sure occasionally you had to share a car with him and other wrestlers. Did you ever feel like, even though you weren't necessarily down with the Smiz, if you're riding in their car, it's got to be secondhand smoke city, right?
Oh my God. I almost had to check into a Betty Ford secondhand smoke clinic. We're in downtown New York one time, and Godfather says to me and Ron, because he rode with me and Ron and Teddy. And so he says to me and Teddy, he goes, and Ron, he goes, can you imagine how many illegal things there are in this one city block? And he's looking up these buildings in New York City. And I said, can you imagine how many illegal things there are in our car?
Yes.
I mean, Conrad, you've never seen anything like it. This is before vape. So these guys had actual joints. They smoked, him and Teddy Long smoked these things like cigarettes. I mean, we'd pull off at a Bob Evans, and Godfather go order like chicken breast and like iced tea. Me and Ron would order cakes and pies, and we're so freaking high. We were high for months riding with him, and we didn't smoke. You've never seen anything like it, Conrad. They smoked them like cigarettes, like a chain smoker. They were just one joint after another.
My God,
that man had a tolerance that was unreal. We're in it was SummerSlam, and I was looking. I see Kane, Big Glenn Jacobs, and he's standing there, and I could tell something's wrong or something's funny, you know. And I walk over there. I said, "What's going on?" He goes, "Just stand here for a minute." And I start getting that smell, and I go, "Oh my God!" I go, "What is that?" And he goes, "That room right there. Godfather's in there with Snoop Dogg." And he said, next to him is Governor Jesse Ventura. I said, "Oh my God, this is great." So me and Glenn are sitting there just waiting to see what happens. Well, the Secret Service come out like to get Governor Ventura's food or something. And they're just like not selling it. I mean, they're just, it is just, it reeks of weed. The whole downstairs area in Chicago reeks of weed, and they're just not selling it. I mean, they're just like, you know what? This isn't our fight. We don't care. Governor Ventura walks out. Jesse walks out, goes to grab his catering. He looks up and he goes, "Yeah, see, the boys are still the boys." Turn around, walk back in.
Did you, you said that
from what I hear, there was a certain Austrian oak one time that wanted to meet with the Godfather.
Really?
Yes, sir. I heard that just recently. I don't want to tell the whole story because I will save that for Mr. Charles Wright to tell. But from what I understand, there was a certain Austrian oak that needed to meet the Godfather one time.
I love that. You mentioned Ron earlier. I know that he was not a big Schmiz guy. Do you think there was a chance that Godfather was ever? You mentioned Godfather was high in the ring with you once, and you were like, "Hey, hit me with the hoe train." Do you think that ever happened with Ron and Godfather?
100%. I know it happened. It happened. So Ron doesn't like screw around. You don't screw around Ron. Ron, the unfuckwithable. That defines Ron Simmons. So Ron is out there with Godfather, and he goes to lock up with Godfather, and Godfather goes and starts running the ropes. Literally starts running the ropes back and forth. And I'm sitting there watching. What the fuck is he doing? And so Ron's sitting there just watching him run the ropes. This is the middle of the match, and finally Ron looks at him and goes. And he goes to lock up with him again, and Godfather takes off and starts running the ropes again. So I'm sitting there watching, going, "What in the world is he doing?" And we're sitting there. I mean, the place is packed. That's when Steve was hot. The place is packed, and he's running the ropes. And so finally, Ron, it's like sitting there, and he goes to lock up with him again, and Godfather goes to take off again, and Ron goes, "Stop." He goes, "Now, what do you want to do?" And Godfather goes, "I'm sorry, Ron, I'm high." Ron just looks at him. I said, "Don't tag me. Do not tag me. I'm not getting in the ring." Yeah, just in the middle of the ring. "Sorry, Ron, I'm high."
How great is that?
It was awesome. Working with Godfather was so much fun.
I do want to ask about a travel story, but before we do, I want to plug my friends over at conradsguide.com. I'm talking to you if you're a small business owner or entrepreneur, or maybe you're just in charge of your company's marketing. Envision Marketing Consultants really helped me. I'm talking about my buddy Eric Nichols and his team over there. They helped me understand the space when it came to buying advertising for my company online. I've been advertising radio and TV for a while, but I felt like I needed to advertise on the internet, but I didn't really know how to do that. But specifically, if your company does SEO or pay-per-click or targeted display, or maybe you just think it would be nice to have some ads on streaming video like Hulu or YouTube or Amazon. If your company's doing any of that, or they want to do any of that, I want to recommend you talk to my buddy Eric Nichols and Envision Marketing Consultants. You can find him at conradsguide.com. I let him use that domain because he really is my guy. Anybody who knows me in real life knows anytime something comes up, whatever it may be, somebody needs landscaping, somebody needs a car repair, somebody needs Pokemon cars, I probably have a guy, and I'll say, "Oh, I got a guy." Eric Nichols is my guy when it comes to advertising online. And you've probably heard the phrase, "Jack of all trades, master of none." I want to just tell you, hey, here's the move when it comes to advertising on the internet. Phone a friend, get an expert. We've all heard that new buzzword, the algorithm. Well, that's a real thing, and it changes every month, every week, every day, every hour sometimes. How can you possibly stay on top of understanding what these different delivery services and apps and platforms, what's really working best for them, and also stay on top of running your own business? You can't wear both hats. I want you to call my friend Eric Nichols, and he is going to flatten the curve for you. I'm talking to you if you're doing B2B or retail or food and beverage, manufacturing, even nonprofits. Man, if he can do it for mortgages, he can do it for you. And if you're ready to start your digital marketing, or maybe you just want to see and get a second opinion on what you're doing right now, Envision can improve your results. They can save you money. They can get you more leads. And what I like best about Eric Nichols is if he takes a look at what you're doing right now and he thinks you're doing pretty well and there's no real recommendations, he'll tell you that. He's not in the business to just sell you something to sell you something. He wants to be your trusted advisor moving forward. So if you've got questions about your campaign or optimizing in the future, you'll know who to call. You'll call my guy, Eric Nichols. Go right now to conradsguy.com to find Envision Marketing Consultants, where smart but simple marketing drives results. conradsguy.com. Hey, let's talk a little bit about these photos that are on the internet. I've seen photos of what looks like you and some of your friends dressed up as pimps. I assume that has to do with The Godfather. Can you tell us what this is?
Yes, this is one of the greatest nights of our life. So we go out to Godfather's wedding. He's married, and he's still married to the same wonderful woman, wonderful lady, just a terrific person. She's smart lady, great lady, perfect for Godfather. And so me and Ron go out and get all this pimp outfits. And we walked into the wedding late with canes, with that pimp outfit, and with our wives dressed as hoes. It disrupted the entire wedding.
I love that.
It was awesome. We walked in literally like 5 or 10 minutes late. We thought, were this either going to be the biggest, funniest thing we've done, or they're going to get mad at us and throw us out? It turned out to be the first. Everybody thought it was hilarious. We walked in late with the canes and the pimps. It took us all day to find all that shit in Vegas, to get all that shit we had. Had women, had our wives dressed up as hoes, just like hookers, and me and Ron dressed like pimps with all the canes and all the jewelry and stuff. And we came in late to Godfather's wedding and made a big hit. Everybody found it pretty funny.
I love that story. Hey, you mentioned earlier how big of friends Ron was or Godfather was with Vince McMahon. And I know that ribs were always a thing. I know there's some pretty famous ribs out there about, people having hogs locked in Vince's office and things like that. Did Godfather ever prank Vince? Was there ever a rib on Vince that you can recall?
Godfather didn't, and I'm pretty sure it was Owen. I'm not 100% sure it was not me. I know that for sure it was not Ron, and I don't think it was Godfather. Godfather's not a huge ribber. But anyway, Vince apparently was like in the bathroom or something in his office, and the hose came in, and they said, where do we need to go to dress? They go in that office that says Vince McMahon, that's your handler, that's where you need to go. So the hose all go in there and start taking off their clothes when Vince is walking out. Oh my God! Oh God! I got you. Vince doesn't get mad. He just thinks it's funny. He did throw him out. So he did throw him out. He did definitely throw him out.
I gotta ask. You mentioned earlier how many illegal things are in this car. Of course, we know the rules have really relaxed and the laws have really relaxed with regards to marijuana. But I know that when you're traveling internationally, or just often even in domestic airports, you'll see the police dogs going around. Did you guys ever have a scary call, a close call with Godfather and a police dog?
100%. Now we had a couple. We had two. So I got to tell you both. The second one is better than the first one. So I'm walking in Vegas, and they used to have the escalator downstairs, the baggage claim where Godfather lived, and all the guys were down there. And I see this cop says, hey, Bradshaw. And I say, hey, how you doing, man? He goes, can I get a picture with you? I said, yeah, of course, man. So I walked over, took a picture with the police officer, and he had a dog there. And I said, does your dog, is it a bomb dog or a drug dog? And he goes, no, it's a bomb dog. And I said, well, do bomb dogs smell drugs? And he goes, no, it's one or the other. So now I know I got a bomb dog that can't smell drugs. And I said, hey, you want to come meet the boys? And he goes, oh my God, yeah, it'd be great. I said, all the guys are down here. Bring your dog with you. So now I've been drinking on the plane. They know this. So now I'm coming down the escalator with a cop and a dog. Oh guys were running across baggage claim. Godfather looked up and goes, the fuck are you doing? And just left his bag. He's running out of baggage claim. Guys are leaving their bags and running and all this stuff. And I said, oh, the guys are nervous about something. I don't know what it is. So, yeah, it took them forever. Every one of them got me back, but it was awesome. But the best police dog story was we're on A1A in Florida, the highway, that runs north and south on the East Coast. And we're driving along, we're flying as we always did, and we see Godfather outside with a cop on the side of the road. And I said, oh shit, he's got pulled over. So he's not riding with us. He's riding with, I think he's riding with Vistra. And so we pull over right in front of the cop. When we pull over, we can smell the weed. We can smell the weed from it. There's the Godfather's car, the cop car, then us. We can smell it from there. Like, oh shit, he's going to jail. So we got to do something to get him out of here. So we walk back there, and Godfather is happy as he can be. He's high as a kite. He's happy. He's talking to the cop. He goes, hey, it's the APA. Come up here, guys. Come here. And so we walk up there and go, hey, Charles, can we help you? Why don't we talk to the cop? And Ron goes, well, Charles, we'll talk to the cop. You get out of here. He goes, no. He goes, the cop saw me, recognized me, wanted a picture, which is actually exactly what happened. The police officer saw Charles driving down the road, pulled him over because he recognized him and wanted a picture. Well, it turns out that Charles is it is like Cheech and Chong in this freaking car.
My God.
It is bellowing out of the car. And we're like, Charles, let us take the picture. You need to get out of here before this cop comes to his senses, or another police officer stops and sees 3B guys with a cop on the side of the road and thinks they need to help or something and get the wrong cop here. We're all going to jail. And so then we look in the back of the cop car, and there's a drug dog in the back of the squad car that is parked right in front of Charles, and this dog is going, oh! It's like scratching at the window. Oh! It's like you got to be shitting me. I've hit the mother load, and you're not letting me out. And this dog is going freaking ballistic, like howling and barking and scratching at the window, trying to get out because the dog has hit the mother freaking load. And the cop looks around and he goes, "Hey, even my dog recognizes you."
My God.
Yeah. Took some pictures and let him go.
Even my dog recognizes you.
Even my dog recognized. The cop just did not want to arrest him. And that dog almost had a heart attack. It was barking so much.
We're spending a lot of time talking about some of the maybe illegal things that happened with Godfather, but I've always felt like he was almost I don't know if Vince had sort of designated, or maybe it wasn't ever official, but it was sort of understood that the Undertaker was, like, pardon the pun, the Godfather of the locker room. That the character of the Godfather, the real life Charles Wright, if the Undertaker was like the president of the locker room, then maybe Godfather was the vice president. Is that pretty close?
100%. Yeah, 100%. And Vince loved them both. I mean, they're like Vince. I mean, treated those guys completely different. He loved those two guys. I'm sure still does. But when we had Wrestlers Court, Kane was sometimes the Belliff because they're associated with the Undertaker, because Glenn's a good dude. But Godfather was always the original Belliff. Because he was association with Undertaker. And you're right. Those guys demanded huge respect from the boys. They were stand-up guys. They were leaders. And so, yeah, those two guys were set apart from everybody else because of who they were. But yeah, that's how Vince would see it as well. Everybody saw it that way. Oh, I'll tell you another good story. so we're in Kentucky one time, and I won't. Oh my God, I can't tell the guys that were with him because they're. I don't want to. Anyway, there were a couple guys that want to go out with Godfather, and so we had like a noon show the next day, and they show up late. And one of them, Jack Lanza, has got that cigarette, and he meets him at the door. And that's when he was mad, when he sit there and just blow smoke in your face. And Lanza's sitting there and meets him at the locker room door. And we know they're out with Godfather because they've been talking all day about we're going out with Godfather, going out with Godfather, going out with Godfather. They're late for the show the next day. Lanza meets him at the restroom door, and he goes, Jack, I'm sorry, the valet stole my car, and I just got it back. And Jack knows he's lying. He's sitting there looking at him. He goes, all right, you're not working today. You're fined $500. Be at the building tonight when I get there. I want to talk to you. Okay, sorry, Jack. Godfather comes in like 15 minutes later. He knows none of this has happened. So Godfather walks in. Jack, same thing, meets him at the door with a cigarette. Godfather goes, Jack, I'm sorry. Just had a hell of a night. Just woke up. He goes, I just got here. Jack goes, you're on after intermission, Charles. I want to hear all about it. And then that was it. Just because he didn't lie. But that's how much guys loved Godfather, man. All those guys loved him. He was just a stand-up dude.
It does feel like you never, ever hear a bad word about him. I think that's one of the cool characteristics about him is, you mentioned earlier, and there's been a few guys who've mentioned, that they didn't always get along with the Ultimate Warrior and some of the other characters from wrestling history. But for whatever reason, it feels like he's universally beloved. Do you think that was his just approach to life that did that? Or
He's just the nicest guy, and he doesn't give a shit what anybody does. He's just the ultimate guy. You know, that whatever you do. That's not a big deal. He's, there's not a mean bone in his body. There's a bunch of tough bones in his body, but he's just a nice dude. I mean, you watch. I tell him all the time. Me and Ron have Instagram just to follow him. You know, all the stuff he does. He's going around, smoking around the country and doing all these, playing disc golf and all the stuff he does. He's just a fun guy. I mean, literally, I look on Instagram every day just to see what he's doing. And it's not just smoking. He does all this fun stuff. He's always, doing stuff with different people. He's just a fun guy who loves life. I mean, he is a guy who lights up a room. And I've never heard anybody ever say a bad word about him.
Who do you think would win on a smoke-off, Godfather or Jerry Briscoe?
Oh, Briscoe. Now, Briscoe, it had to be Briscoe in his day. That might still be going on. That would be going on a while. Oh my God. They had one time. We were in Europe, and oh my God, it's like the whole thing is like a Cheech and Chong freaking episode. We were back in the back of the bus. That famous picture was taken. I was there that day. God almighty, I wasn't in that picture. That's one thing I've always regretted, not being in that picture. But they were in the back of the bus, and nearly everybody smoked. Me and Ron didn't, but nearly everybody else did. It just wasn't our gig. And so we're back in the back of the bus, and Taker, the man of wisdom, says, guys, nobody hits it till George Steele hits it, because George was a guy that, might tell on you. And so we're sitting back there, and Briscoe's back there. Everybody, Briscoe's the head agent, and he's back there waiting for George to hit it. So we're sitting back there, and he comes back. George, they said, George, would you like a hit? They had like a can, make it into like a pipe, with the weed in it, so you could smoke it off the can. And George said, "Oh, I hadn't done that in years." And so everybody's like just sitting there, just kind of watching him. Finally goes, "But you know what? Might just do one for old time take." When he lit up that freaking can, it was like a Cheech and Chong. There was like 18 joints lit up. So everybody just like lit up a joint. We're in that bus for the next 6 hours. And so there was a smiz off one time with Briscoe and Godfather, but I don't think there was a winner. I think it went Broadway.
One of the worst things that ever happened to Charles Wright had to be the PTC, the Parent Television Council, because I believe that this PTC led to the pressure from that organization led to the creation for the RTC, the Right to Censor.
Yeah.
And this is where we would see the Godfather character become the Good Father. Now he's going to be wearing, you see, he looks like a businessman with a black tie, but I like that he cut the sleeves off like Bull Buchanan did. This is an interesting look, and it's an interesting idea, but knowing what we've learned about Godfather today, I imagine this was not very much fun for the real-life Charles Wright.
I think it's the only thing he hated. And yeah. I'm pretty sure I've talked to him about it a couple of times. He didn't like that. This is such bullshit. And he had that idiot group. I can't remember who that guy was, some right-wing douchebag that was all about the censoring and stuff, like typical hypocritical asshole. They brought in that Dave Koechner. It was Koechner, right? The guy who played the weatherman in what was the show with Will Ferrell, Anchorman? The guy who played weatherman, the stand-up comedian, funny dude. Him and not Freddie Prince, the guy that oh my God, you know who I am. I'm thinking
Tommy Blancha.
Who is it?
Blancha,
Tommy Blancha. Yeah. Oh my God, I love Tommy, and I forgot his name. Anyway, Tommy was good friends with David, and so they brought him in, and they did that parent-teacher thing one day. And when they saw that Vince was going back after them, those cowards just ran. They're just full of shit. They wanted to make some money off of it. It's like the World Wildlife Fund. They extorted us for the name WWF. They aren't trying to help animals. They're a bunch of assholes who are trying to put money in their pocket. And that's the same thing those guys were doing. They're just assholes. They didn't care about the content. They wanted to make some money. And then when all of a sudden, when Vince and Koechner goes after them, they back off like crazy. And that helped kill the whole Right to Censor Act. But I don't think Godfather liked anything about that.
We're seeing some comments with us live here, and we are live on this Monday morning. We appreciate you being here with us. There's speculation about Val Venus. I guess there was a rumored tag team once upon a time that Godfather was going to team with Val Venus. Of course, this is a porn star character and a pimp character, and it was even suggested online, and who knows if this is real, that the tag team name would have been Supply and Demand. I mean, these are two over-the-top gimmicks for sure in the Attitude Era, a porn star and a pimp character. It's hard to imagine when he was portraying the Papa Shango character in 92 that he would enjoy more success with a pimp character, but still he did. What do you think? Could Godfather and Val Venus have worked as a tag team?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Val was very talented. And as far as I know, they got along well. Nearly everybody got along well. I think Val now has got some issues with some people on Twitter right now, but Val got along well with Godfather, and Val was a good worker and could get that character over. Think about all the different roles that Godfather got over. I mean, that guy's, and the thing is, when he goes to autograph sessions now, he'll be like 3 different people. He'll be Papa Shango. He'll be Godfather. He'll be Nation. He can be Kama. He'll do three different people on 3 different days. It's pretty cool.
I'm curious. I know that you've told the story before about a naked Hornswoggle, and we've heard from guys like Brian James that when the Road Dogg won a belt, man, he went everywhere with it. He put that thing on the back window of his car. He'd wear it to go damn grocery shopping. Was there ever any instances with Godfather like that come to mind? There's two.
So we're up in, I believe it was up in Albany. It was in northern New York, north of New York City. I think it was Albany. Fans used to pull the fire alarm during the middle of the day, so the wrestlers would have to come out, and so they would see them. And so it happened, ever so often. So in the middle of the day, apparently a fan had pulled the fire alarm, and all the guys are out. The whole hotel is out. The fire department shows up, everything. And Godfather is still in his room. So me and Ron are down there, and like I don't know if it was the police chief or the fire chief, or anyway, he was the guy in charge. Well, whoever he was, I don't know if he was officially the chief, but he was in charge. And Godfather sees me and Ron down there. And now this is the first naked story. He goes to the window, and he's he's a big guy. Pulls the curtain back, and he squishes himself against the glass like this, and he's buck naked. He squished himself against the glass, and he's like sitting there like this. It's one of the funniest sights I've ever seen. And me and Ron are just dying. And the chief grabs it, and he goes, "Guys, we have upstairs. You might want to get him out. A large black." He goes, on second thought, just leave him there. It's like we're not dealing with this man. It was awesome. And then we catch him one time. He won the Intercontinental Championship. And we're walking to our hotel room. He's on the ground floor. And Ron goes, "Look at this." And we stop. And Godfather has got the Intercontinental Championship on. And he's buck naked. And he's smoking a little bit. And he's sitting there looking at himself because he's in pretty good shape. And he's flexing his abs. And he's flexing in the mirror, buck naked. And me and Ron are just sitting there in his window watching him like this. And finally he looks around. He goes, "Hey, guys." And just keeps on. It's like, he's the man.
What a story.
Yeah, he's wild. He's absolutely wild. What you see is what you get. That stuff you see on Instagram, that's not put on. That Godfather shit, I mean, he's legitimately the Godfather. He's certifiably crazy in a great way.
You have a note on here about driving to WrestleMania.
Oh, yeah. I said this once before, and somebody goes, "Oh, Godfather's driving under the influence." Fuck you. So anyway, we're driving to WrestleMania. We're in Chicago, and Godfather's driving, and we don't know that he's had some friends visit him that morning. He's pretty good under the influence, and so he's driving. We're driving by that old Clarion, and he's driving right toward the lobby window. And next thing you know, we're on the sidewalk and going into the lobby window, and Ron goes, "Stop!" And Godfather hits the brakes. We're about to drive through the window. And Godfather looks at Ron and looks at me and goes, "Man, I almost drove through that window." I mean, it wasn't like it popped up in the middle of the road. We turned into the hotel, drove on the sidewalk, and were driving into the window. It wasn't like it just all of a sudden appeared. So then Godfather backs off the sidewalk, goes down. We're going down toward WrestleMania. And he looks at me and Ron. He goes, "Did you see me, guys? You see me almost run into that window?" And Ron goes, "No, we weren't in the car."
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we're in White Plains, New York, one time where Arnie used to run the show, and Godfather was on early, and he goes to like an Irish pub next to the building, and we come back, and he's got his shirt off, and it's freezing cold out there, and it's like snows everywhere. He's got his shirt off, and we're going, "What in the world's happened to Godfather?" And so he gets in the car, and Ron says, "What'd you do?" He goes, "I went to a bar." And he goes, "Guys gave me a Russian." And Ron said, "Russian?" And he goes, yeah, a Russian or something like that. Ron said, did they give you a roofie? And he goes, yeah, they gave me a roofie. And he goes, you willingly took a roofie. And he goes, well, they gave it to me. They gave him a roofie to knock him out, and that big sumbitch was still walking. They were going to roll him.
My God.
We're in Albuquerque one time, and we go in there, and we go to some redneck bar, and Godfather goes, now listen, don't you two guys get into a fight in here, okay? He goes, we're going to some redneck bar, and they ain't going to like us in here. Don't get no fucking fight. I said, Godfather, you ain't got to worry about us. The bouncer comes up to us. He goes, would you talk to your friend, please? And I go, oh, fuck. We look around. He's got his shirt off, which he loved to do because he was fucking huge. I mean, he's a big fucking guy. He's out there dancing. Every cowboy in that place is looking at him. Half of them are armed. They're going like, the minute he gets a little drunker, we're gonna jump him. I'm like, oh my God. The whole bar had screeched to a halt just to watch him. He's got the dance floor all to himself. He's out there all by himself dancing with his shirt off. And every cowboy in that place is looking at him like, we're going to get him. At some point tonight, we're going to jump him. They wouldn't do it when he was still sober enough to realize what was happening.
One of the things I like best about Godfather is it feels like he's transitioned to this next phase of life pretty well. You know, it does feel like some folks really struggle with, you know, leaving the wrestling business behind. But it feels like he's always had businesses lined up in the Las Vegas area. I don't know what we do or don't want to talk about with that, but it feels like he had a plan for post-wrestling. Man, he's loving life after wrestling too. You mentioned when he does go make appearances these days, he could make an appearance, you know, this morning as the Godfather and this afternoon as Papa Shango or vice versa, and really double dip. It's been a lot of fun to see. But he's also got, you know, his house life like he likes it in his hometown, right?
Yeah, 100%. He's got the perfect life for him, and perfect life for anybody who says, here's what I'd like to be in 40 years. You know, Godfather could have, I think 40 years ago, Godfather said, I want to be here. And that's where he is now. You know, he's a really smart guy. He ran security for a lot of the Vegas bars. And that's a tough thing to do. I mean, imagine in Vegas, you got to run security. I mean, he was so dialed in. You went anywhere in town back in the day, and Godfather had you hooked up. You'd go in free, you'd be VIP'd. I mean, it was all taken care of. In fact, when they sold one of the clubs that they'd given him equity in the club, he was so valuable to him. And so he got a pretty good, you know, retirement pension off of it. And so when WWE times were tough, he could go home and make more money in Vegas than he could on the road. So he never cared about, okay, Vince is going to take you off TV. That's fine. He'll go back and make more money. And even now, he's got he's got a business there with his wife. They're doing well. He does the appearances, I think, just because he enjoys them. I enjoy seeing them, so I hope he never stops. That's why I do them, because I love seeing the guys. And he's got an incredible life. I mean, he's a very happy, content person. I mean, if you look at wrestlers that have done really well with everything they wanted to do, he's the poster child for all that.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the poster child of saving money. I want to give a shout out to our friend Andrew. He's a maintenance worker from Tennessee, and he had heard me bragging here on the program for a while that you still have a bunch of equity in your house. And instead of hanging on to one of those low COVID interest rates, you need to take care of that really high credit card balance that you have. Well, Andrew is in Tennessee, and he needed to pay off some debt, and he wanted to go ahead and get a new roof and get some new flooring. And instead of taking out new debt in order to do that, he came to SaveWithConrad.com. We hooked him up and showed him how to tap into the equity that he's built up. He was able to consolidate all of that debt and get the cash he needs to upgrade his floors and his roof. He's going to save more than $400 a month. Now, he didn't just save $400 once a month. He's going to save $400 a month each and every month, all because he spent a few minutes on the phone with us at SaveWithConrad.com. And I want to challenge you. Do you have some things around your house you'd like to update? Maybe it's you need some new kitchen cabinets or new kitchen countertops, or maybe you want to upgrade and get a rain head tile shower, or maybe it's time to put a pool in the backyard or a man cave or a home theater. Whatever with your house you said to yourself, hey, someday we'd like to, why not make someday today? You can turn your house into your dream home with no money out of pocket. And if you let us get rid of all your credit card debt at the same time, you can do it with cheaper monthly payments. My man Andrew got new floors, got a new roof, got rid of all his credit card debt. He's got access to all that now because his credit cards are paid off, and he's still saving over $400 a month. Think about that. He's saving $5,000 a year now that otherwise he would have worked for that money, paid taxes on it, and then just given it away. And I also want to tell you that not only can we help you save money right now at savewithconrad.com, we can help you save money in the future. Let me explain. We've got a year 3 guarantee. All the experts seem to agree that interest rates are going to improve over the next couple of years. And so some people are trying to time their refinance to make sure that they don't pay 2 sets of closing costs. We can help you with that right now. What I mean is the best time to start saving money was years ago. The second best time is right now, today. So if you know you can get a better interest rate, a cheaper monthly payment, and get rid of all that credit card debt once and for all, you should do that. Once you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. And you know you can do better than your credit cards. I mean, what is that interest rate like? 20%, 30%? Whatever it is, it's too damn high. Well, with our 3-year guarantee, this affords you the opportunity to get the best deal possible for your family right now. But when the interest rates do improve, we'll refinance you again without charging you a whole new set of lender fees. So the reason people try to wait until the rates fall so they can refinance, they're basically saying, I'll just continue to pay more for now on the hope and a prayer that things improve in the future. What I'm suggesting is let's start saving money today. And if and when interest rates do improve, why not get another free refinance? That's right. No new lender fees. You're not going to pay 2 sets of closing costs. You're going to get the peace of mind of knowing that you've got the best deal for your family now, and you've got the best deal for your family in the future. You're not going to waste money on a second set of closing costs. And I want to remind you, you don't need perfect credit to do this. There's no reason to feel ashamed if you feel like you've been behind here or there. Buddy, you've got a friend in the mortgage business, and that's me. Go right now to savewithconrad.com, where we don't say no, we say not yet, but here's how. Let's get a plan to get your family out of debt and to start saving money today at savewithconrad.com. Again, you don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket. So what are you waiting for? Let us run the numbers and start saving you some cash at savewithconrad.com. NMLS number 2129, equal housing lender, savewithconrad.com. We've had a lot of fun talking about the Godfather today, and we are looking forward to tonight. The Queen and King of the Ring tournament will kick off tonight on Monday Night Raw on Netflix. And the rumor and innuendo is that Nikki Bella is back on Raw tonight. I'm excited to see where all this goes. I want to thank everybody for hanging out with us live. We've actually still got a handful of live questions I want to get to here. Ask a Bum wants to know, John, did you study the Ted DiBiase character for the JBL character?
No, I didn't have to. And I always joked with Ted, about stealing his character, which I did. There's nothing new in this business. I don't guess. Eventually at some point you go back far enough that somebody created something. And I had a great picture that I've got of Ted, me, and Alberto Del Rio, 3 generations of stolen gimmicks. So, no, I didn't really study it. I studied more the J.R. Ewing character, but now I did take a lot from Ted. So I know a lot of the vignettes we did had a real hint of $1 Million Man in them. So that came a lot from Vince. My inspiration was also just as much as Ted DiBiase, because Ted was fantastic at it, and was a J.R. Ewing. I always told Ted, I said, I stole your gimmick, but it wasn't near as good. Actually, here's what I told him. I told him one time, I said, you know what, Ted, I stole your gimmick. I wasn't near as good as you, but Orlando was a hell of a lot better than Virgil.
I wanted to get another question here for you from Michael Collins, who says, how often do wrestling fans approach you about wrestling and end up asking you about the stock market too? Is the stock market a big topic of conversation with fans?
I do get a lot. They get a lot about 5 bets, and I hate to give any advice at all, because I don't want people to lose money. If it's my money, I get it, and if it's a gamble, I'll always give people my opinion on the line or, who I think is going to win. But I always tell them, by the way, it's gambling. You could lose everything. But I hate to give advice on stock markets. People put their hard-earned money into it. So I hate to give advice. I do invest, but I hate to give advice on it. But I do get a lot of tips with it. I usually give them general ideas about, hey, look at uranium right now because of what, President Trump's doing with the nuclear facilities and how they're going to push nuclear plants around the world. So I give more ideas of trends than I do certain stocks is what I try to do.
AOTV Productions is with us here live and says, Liv Morgan, Roxanne Perez, and Dominic Mysterio have all been recent victims of stalking. I really hope they stay safe. What do you think about all this, John? Have you seen some of these reports?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, and I think it's inherent with the business, but that doesn't excuse it. I mean, these guys are idiots, and they need to be in jail. People that do this shit, they're dangerous, and they need to be in jail. There's some idiots out there, and there's too much access, because of social media and stuff. I I think it's absolutely reprehensible what these guys do when they stalk people. I tell you, I had a guy that stalked me for a couple, not stalked me, but, you know, he would send me like stupid messages, get my phone number somehow. I told WWE about it. It was all racial stuff. You know, he sent me horrible racist stuff. He called me one time from a number that was listed, and I got his number, and they had the state troopers at his house within a couple hours, and it stopped. But that's how you got to stop it. These guys are idiots. A person that is not mentally stable that would stalk a person, and they need to be locked up and taken out of society.
Guy W. Johns says, if I were TKO, I'd really want sponsorship everywhere. As a fan, though, I just don't like it. Same with logos on NBA jerseys, but it's not enough to make me stop watching, which is what counts. Of course, this comes out of the recent revelation that not only are there Slim Jim tables, there's Fireball ladders. I, for one, think this is fun. And I wonder, hey, man, why didn't we think of selling ad space on like the soles of the Brooklyn Brawlers boots? Can you imagine? Like,
that's a great idea, actually. That is a terrific idea to sell on his boots. Like when he does a job, he's got his boots. Yeah, that's terrific.
Why not? Especially when Papa Shango was setting them on fire. You know, you're going to get a tight shot of it. Why not? Hey, have a little.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's so many things you could do. I remember one time Vince had a meeting with us about how we had to be serious about how everything had to be a shoot. And then that day he had a drawing in a wall that Hornswoggle walked through like the old cartoon. You know, like and then the next person tried to walk through it and hit the wall. And Vince had just had a meeting with us about how we had to take everything serious as a shoot. And you got this leprechaun that just walked through a fucking wall. So I always thought we should have sold Lucky Charms with Hornswoggle. You know, I think there's so many things you can do with sponsorships just to be creative. And these guys are being really creative. Is it my cup of tea? I really don't care. I mean, they're making a ton of money. God bless them. And it is filtering down to the boys and girls. So God bless them.
Let's talk about, as we put a button on this week's episode, the Godfather. You know, he had quite a run. We've talked about him as Papa Shango. We've talked about him as Godfather, of course. We talked about him as Kama Mustafa. You know, through the years, he has done it all, including going into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2016. He was an Intercontinental Champion. He was a Tag Team Champion. But what was great about, I think, Papa Shango and Godfather is those characters didn't really need title belts.
No.
Like, you know, in a world where we're supposed to believe this is like a make-believe league and everybody's battling to become champion, he was a great character that added to the program. And I think sometimes when guys have a conversation, John, about, oh, who's the greatest to never hold a world title? And there's always these debates about whether someone's career is complete if they didn't main event WrestleMania or they weren't a world champion or that sort of thing. I think Godfather is proof that none of that shit really matters. Like, in order to make a meaningful difference and be a big part of the program and have an incredible legacy and be beloved by the fans and make a great living, you don't always have to be in a serious angle for the world title on the main event to be a major part of the program. Fair to say?
100% fair to say. I used to watch him in house shows, and, you know, he created that with me, you know, on the house shows. I saw him take off, and he was as big a star as we had on the card.
Yes.
Literally as big a star as we had on the card. That was with Steve there. There was Rock there. He would get an ovation like he was one of the biggest, or there was nobody gotten bigger. When he'd do his stuff and he'd do his all his sayings and his catchphrases and his hoe train, that guy was incredibly over. He drew incredible ratings. He was great at what he did. I completely agree. I mean, you give him the world title, don't give him the world title, made no difference. He was as over as anybody on the card, and he did it all himself. He created that himself. That was not something that came from creative. That was not something that came from the machine giving it to him. He created all that himself, which is pretty cool.
Also pretty cool is what we've got coming up next week. We're going to be live here at somethingtowrestle.com. So if you haven't already, go hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications bell. You don't want to miss us. We're doing these live in front of you, and you get to interact and be a part of our live broadcast. Next week, our topic will be the legacy of The Undertaker. We've talked about a lot of your old friends, and man, I don't know that there's a bigger legacy in pro wrestling than The Undertaker, especially when it comes to WWE. We're going to tackle all of that next week here on the program. Of course, between now and then, there's going to be a lot of great sports action, John. We're right in the middle of the NBA Finals. They're tied at 1 apiece. The Thunder lost the first one, but boy, they just took them to the woodshed last night. And you've been having a lot of fun with 5 Best Bets. Tell everybody how they can keep up with what you're doing and what you've really got your eye on these days.
Yeah, thank you. Baseball's getting I love baseball because of the numbers. I love numbers, and you got some incredible matchups right now in baseball, some incredible teams. You just had some teams get swept. Philadelphia just got swept this weekend. But got add 5 Best Bets. It's on Twitter, X, at 5 Best Bets, and it's on our YouTube channel. I had a little bit of a break from it just because I've been traveling so much and clotheslining people and hitting leprechauns with trash cans. But add 5 Best Bets on Twitter and also our YouTube channel, Stories of Briscoe and Bradshaw. It'll be on there with the video. We go over just the 5 best bets. Sometimes we'll list a lot more, but we always have just the 5 best bets for you so you can prioritize if you choose to gamble. And again, I gamble all these because I love gambling. And we're not telling you to gamble. We're not selling you nothing, by the way. We're not trying to sell you a subscription, sell you picks, nothing. It's just for free. We're just having fun talking baseball and our other sports. I also put rugby picks out there and NBA picks.
Have a little fun with 5 Best Bets and be sure to pick up. If you can't get enough John, he's got another podcast that actually afforded him the opportunity to join us here. Somehow, some way, Mr. Briscoe has loaned him to us. But Stories with Briscoe and Bradshaw has hundreds of episodes. They've interviewed a who's who of professional wrestling legends, and it's all available for you now anywhere you enjoy podcasts. It's Stories with Briscoe and Bradshaw. And John, we haven't talked about it much, but you and I are going to be together next month for the TNT Hall of Fame. Our great close personal friend Eric Bischoff is going into the Hall of Fame. It's Waterloo, Iowa. I'm going to be there. You're going to be there. We'll have some information on how you can join us next week here on the program. We hope you'll come hang out with us, because is there anything more fun than hanging out at that bar in Waterloo, Iowa, that hotel bar? I mean, it looks like the bar scene in Star Wars, but with wrestling history sitting around the bar, 50 years around the bar. And you never know when there's going to be a run-in from an ambulance too, right?
That's right. That's right. A couple of years ago, Mr. Briscoe passes out. He thinks he has a stroke and he's unresponsive. And long story short, of course, he's fine. He's still with us, thank goodness. But as they're carrying him out of the gurney, he has still not responded. And, there's this rivalry between Oklahoma and Iowa, the wrestling. So as they're carrying him out of the gurney, he has not said a word since he fell off the chair. And he's covered in sweat and, thinking, man, I really thought this might be it. But I'm sitting there talking to him. And I said, Mr. Briscoe, as they got him on the gurney, putting him in the ambulance, I said, don't you die in Iowa. You know how embarrassing that would be? And when he looks up for the first time and kicks out, and he goes, no shit. And that's when he kicked out.
I love
that. All the people taking him in the ambulance, like, what does that mean? Your state sucks. That's what that means. I'm sorry. You live in a state that sucks. Nobody wants to die here. Nobody wants to live here either.
Hey,
It's a great Hall of Fame. It's so much fun. Yeah. We're going to have Jim Londos, the greatest draw of all time. His daughter's going to be there, and she's going to have the original belt that Londos had for people to take pictures with it. I mean, it's going to be really cool.
You know what? I'll bring the big gold belt too. Fans will be able to take a picture with the big gold belt. It's going to be a great time. I'm a big fan, obviously, of StarCast, which is coming up July 11th and 12th. Tickets are on sale now at StarCast.com.
Down in God Bless, Texas.
That's right. A huge fan of WrestleCade, huge fan of WrestleCon. But the TNT Hall of Fame in Waterloo, Iowa is a horse of a different color. It's more inclusive. You're going to feel like the velvet rope has been lifted. I'm telling you, if you go to that hotel bar, you're going to be able to have some interactions with some of your absolute favorite wrestlers. It is a time to celebrate wrestling history. So check it out, the TNT Hall of Fame in Waterloo, Iowa, coming your way next month. We'll have more info next week about how you can get your tickets and all that when we're talking about the legacy of The Undertaker right here on Something to Wrestle with John Layfield.